The rain had stopped. The filming was mostly done. A sheen of sweat covered Leo from the hot tea. Professor Reed preferred not to blast the AIC, but the air in her apartment was a bit heavy. A fan oscillated in the living room, pulling cool air from the bedroom where the air conditioner was running. It created a strange, almost wasteful sense of well-being. A perfect temperature, neither hot nor cold, ideal for drinking tea until you sweat. The 2-hour shoot had been packed. Now it was time for Leo and Sean to leave. Before they did, Leo offered to take one more photo, a portrait of Dr. Sterling and Professor Reed together. They both readily agreed. Theirs was a friendship from another era, one that could withstand years of silence and remain unchanged. Back then, meeting people was an event, staying in touch a challenge, and truly connecting a rarity. To have survived the storms of life and still be there for each other was everything. A friendship where one call was all it took for the other to show up, even in the pouring rain. Leo had them stand in front of the massive bookshelf. Their old photograph had been taken on a city street. This one would be in a home filled with a lifetime of knowledge. He used the standard camera app, not one with beauty filters. The sharp vertical and horizontal lines of the bookcase would get warped by those filters. He knew that when people posed for a picture, their facial muscles instinctively tensed up. The pituitary gland had a fight-or-flight response to cameras, and that, combined with wrinkles, could make anyone look ancient. But wrinkles were different when you smiled. They softened, spread out. Holding up his phone, Leo said, "Professors, I'm just finding the right angle. You two just stand naturally. I'll let you know when I've got the lighting and everything set." Sean moved a table lamp around, switching it on and off, checking the built-in lights on the bookshelf. Light was everything. In a professional studio, you had a team with light boards, reflectors, and massive strobes, all to sculpt the lines of a face. As long as the brain hadn't received the "okay, we're taking the picture now" command, most people stayed relaxed. Since Leo was still finding his angle, Dr. Sterling and Professor Reed stood side by side, chatting casually. "Leo's quite the professional, Dr. Sterling teased. "He even has requirements for the lighting." Professor Reed shot him a playful glare. They tried to remember how they'd stood all those years ago, flipping through the pages of their memory, but it was too far back. Cameras were precious then, film even more so. You didn't waste a single shot. The photo in Dr. Sterling's wallet was a lucky candid, a classic captured in a fleeting moment. Dr. Sterling's hairline was a little high. It had been even when he was young. He used to favor a style like a 90s heartthrob, hair swept down to frame his face and make him look younger. He'd been vain back then, he admitted, more concerned with his image than Professor Reed had ever been. As they reminisced, smiles flickered across their faces. Leo, pretending to adjust his angle, would call out for them to turn this way or that. At one point, the fan swung around, its breeze gently lifting their hair, creating a sense of effortless calm. While they were distracted, Leo aimed his phone and fired off a series of rapid-fire shots. Click, click, click. Then he lowered his phone. Professor Reed, starting to feel a bit tired, asked, "Are we ready to start?" Leo grinned. "We're already finished." Professor Reed and Dr. Sterling stared at him. They had been bracing themselves for the formal part, getting ready to tense up, and it was already over. Just like that, it felt almost like a prank. Leo opened his photo gallery and showed them the results. "Wow, oh my word." They both gasped. Dr. Sterling had posed for countless photos for work, promotional videos, giant posters on the university walls. At his most conceited, he'd even considered having a bust commissioned. And then there were the wedding photos, a recurring event in his life. He'd once hired a photographer who charged $15,000 for a single portrait session, a session that consumed an entire day of his life. The photos had turned out horrendously ugly and old-looking. His ex-wife saw them and was glad they'd divorced. His current wife saw them and considered it. The photographer insisted it was a psychological realist style, and it wasn't his fault if the subject wasn't handsome, which led to a lawsuit. He never imagined this student of Evelyn's could be this good. It was unbelievable. The photos were taken without him even knowing, yet they seemed to capture his best features, his very essence. Comparing them to the photo from their youth, he saw that while he was older now, he wasn't worse for wear. He looked distinguished, satisfied, extremely satisfied. This was a man who was willing to pay 15 grand for a photo, and though that last one ended in a legal battle, the intent was there. Professor Reed was just as delighted. Every angle, every candid moment was perfect. The embroidered tea gown she wore was beautiful, ornate even, but it didn't overshadow her. She was older, yes, but not ugly. Time had etched its lines on her, but she was simply blooming in a more mature, more profound way. She was glad she'd dug this outfit out of her closet. She would have to send copies of these to all her old friends. A wide, genuine smile spread across her face. Dr. Sterling, Leo said, "Can I add you on Messenger? I'll touch up the details on the photos and send them directly to you, along with the video of the tea ceremony my roommate Sean filmed." "Yes, of course, of course." Dr. Sterling immediately pulled out his phone. This young man was a jack of all trades. Next time the university had an event, he'd have to find a way to get him there. Even just for a few pictures, it would be worth it. Leo watched as Dr. Sterling produced a gold-plated, jewel-encrusted phone that looked like it belonged in a music video. A man of taste, Leo thought. A loyal supporter of the most expensive things. "Apologies, wrong one." Dr. Sterling put it back and pulled a standard iPhone from his other pocket. Leo suppressed a smile. A man who's been married 4 times would, of course, have 2 phones. He scanned Dr. Sterling's QR code. The contact name was President Sterling. His Facebook feed wasn't updated often, but it was public, no friends-only settings. He posted about university policy, shared articles about tea, and interspersed them with a couple of pictures of his wife. Leo noticed that in every photo of them together, Dr. Sterling was perfectly posed and looked great, while his wife was caught mid-sentence or blinking. One more professor added to his contacts. As they were leaving, Professor Reed handed Leo another box of tea. 100-year-old Bush Narcissus Oolong. It was a large box, but inside were only 6 small packets. "Luke and Penelope both love tea," she said. "Next time you see them, you can brew a packet of this, and see if you can get some of their good stuff in return." Dr. Sterling shamelessly piped up from the side. "Evelyn, I'll take a box too. This stuff is delicious. The online sellers have hyped the price up to over $1,000 a pound. I can hardly afford it anymore." Professor Reed handed Sean a thermos. It was a sleek swell bottle with a red lion emblem on it. She'd asked him about his family earlier, and he'd mentioned he had a younger sister. She could tell Sean wasn't a tea enthusiast. His mind was elsewhere. The thermos was for his sister and was easily worth $100. As for the tea, even at its exorbitant price, the 6 packets in the box amounted to maybe an ounce or 2, a few $100s worth. Leo and Sean finally left the apartment. As they stepped out of the building, Sean let out a huge sigh of relief. "Dude, that was so tense," he breathed. "How do you do it? How are you so calm talking to Professor Reed and a university president?" "I was nervous too," Leo admitted. "But whenever I get nervous, I just think about Alex. He's just a person too. What would he do? Why is he never afraid to speak up?" Thinking that, I just force myself to say something. After you start, it's not so bad. Even if you mess up, it's not like they're going to dock your pay or anything. Sean gave Leo a thumbs up. He was genuinely impressed. It was true. If that had been Alex, he would have been chatting away with them like they were old friends. Jordan was more hit or miss. If he was interested, he'd talk your ear off, but if not, he'd just clam up. They reached the security booth by the faculty housing gate and waved to Mr. Roberts, who was engrossed in a TV show. He was watching The Americans. On screen, Philip and Elizabeth were on a tense mission. Mr. Roberts was completely sucked in and barely had time for them, just giving a dismissive wave as they walked by. The air was fresh and clean after the rain. The pavement glistened. Sean headed back to the dorm with the tea and the thermos, ready to start editing. He was thrilled about the bottle. It was beautiful, and his sister would love it. He could bring it back to her during fall break. He had a checklist for the day. Post a new TikTok for Leo, edit the tea ceremony video for Professor Hoffman, and most importantly, buy his bus ticket home. The holiday rush meant tickets were scarce. If he could snag one, he could leave a day or 2 early and beat the worst of the crowds. Alex could probably get him a ticket with one call home, maybe even a private cabin on an Amtrak train. But their town was in the middle of nowhere, hours from the nearest station or airport. Sean insisted on buying it himself, and Alex didn't push it. Besides, Alex figured asking his parents for that kind of favor might just get him a lecture. Leo hadn't gone for his run that morning, so now he arranged to meet Stella at the library. The thought of the upcoming week-long break and the time they'd be apart filled him with a strange melancholy. He and Sean would be heading in opposite directions. The leaves on the trees were a vibrant, freshly washed green. Some of the flowers in the beds by the main fountain were beaten down by the rain, their heads drooping. A lone butterfly, appearing from nowhere, flitted cautiously above the blossoms. Today, it was Leo's turn to wait for Stella. She'd texted that she'd be a few minutes. As he stood there, the mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Host has studied the art of tea with a sincere and joyful heart, adopting an attitude of earnest enjoyment. Having grasped the essence of the ceremony, moving from mastering technique to transcending it, Host is rewarded with intermediate tea ceremony skill, level 3, permanent. A man skilled in the art of tea is truly charming. Your tea can not only soothe a wealthy woman's fatigue, but also smooth the wrinkled sorrows of her heart, making her willing to open up to you. Leo blinked. That was a hell of a skill. Open up to you? He thought. Does that involve taking off clothes? He felt his face flush. The butterflies circled 3 times before finally settling on a red flower. Leo had been waiting for less than 3 minutes when Stella appeared, jogging toward him. She moved quickly, arriving slightly out of breath. She was wearing a pair of cool black combat boots, black cargo pants, and a uniquely designed black tank top. It had a straight neckline, with one wide black strap and another that looked like it was fashioned from a white silk ribbon. She was at that age where she looked good in anything. The outfit was entirely black, save for the twisted white of that one strap. The top had layers of ruching, managing to be both cute and tough at the same time. Just like her, she had a large messenger bag slung over her shoulder and a vibrant energy as she ran. A small section of her bangs was pulled back with the thinnest of black hair ties, keeping it out of her eyes. It looked like she'd just showered. Her hair was still a little damp. She ran right up to Leo as if she were about to leap into his arms, only stopping at the very last second, their faces inches apart. The scent of lychee, her body wash, she'd told him with a laugh, shattering his romantic fantasies about her natural scent, wafted over him. He couldn't help but smile when he saw her. There was a girl running toward him. The moment he'd spotted her in the distance, his heart had started to flutter. Now that she was right in front of him, it was pounding faster than she had been running. Thump, thump, thump. He could feel it beating, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Normally, your heart just does its job, quietly and steadily. When you can actually feel it beating, it means it's working overtime. Time to apply some pressure. Say, by hugging a pretty girl. Leo wrapped his arms around her. He wasn't tall. The system's height buffs were coming way too slowly, but he was strong, and he could easily lift her. It was a shame she didn't instinctively know to wrap her legs around his waist. She just laughed and draped her arms around his neck. He felt like if they ever took a picture together, he'd need to find a staircase and have her stand on a lower step just to give himself a height advantage. Standing face to face, he fell short, but it was the middle of the day on a busy path. They didn't hold the embrace for long, just long enough to satisfy that skin hunger you get after being apart for what feels like forever, but was actually just one day. It was enough to calm his racing heart, to remind it to pace itself. It had another 40 years of work to do, after all. They started walking toward the student strip. There was no sun today, and the rain had cooled everything down. Stella felt like going for a ride. They went to a garage behind one of the shops on the strip, the kind with a roll-up metal door. Seeing the gleaming black and yellow motorcycle again, Leo was finally sure that the morning ride hadn't been a dream. It was real. He hadn't paid much attention last time, but today he noticed how tidy the garage was. It wasn't just the one motorcycle. On the wall was a perfectly organized toolboard with hammers, pliers, and every wrench imaginable. It was the kind of setup that would make any guy drool, a meticulously arranged display of craftsmanship. Stella came in, dropped her bag, and pulled on a pair of work gloves stained with motor oil. She started the bike, giving it a quick inspection. "I was a science kid in high school," she said as she checked the engine. "I love mechanical engineering, but my mom hates it when I mess with this stuff, so I set this up here. I can fix it myself. It's relaxing, working with these things. They have their own language, you know." Leo watched as she carefully inspected the tires, unafraid of the grease. He was a guy, and he'd never once thought a mechanic was sexy. Until now, watching Stella crouch down, wearing those big oil-stained gloves, it was incredibly sexy. Her sexiness wasn't about showing skin. Her sleeveless top only revealed her arms. The design of the shirt covered her waist, and the neckline was high, revealing just the base of her neck. She wore the Tiffany key he'd given her, and it swayed gently as she moved. On her wrist was a big, cool-looking Casio digital watch. On his wrist, a watch like that would look like a cheap accessory. On hers, it looked like it was worth 1,000 times more, like some exclusive designer piece. She was so focused, so captivating. Leo couldn't resist pulling out his phone to capture the moment. He worried his memory wasn't good enough. He wanted to record every second they spent together. Just then, she turned her head. There was a little smudge of grease on her nose. Seeing him watching her, she smiled. The picture was perfect. It looked like it could be on the cover of a magazine. Youthful, her gaze pure and intense, her smile sweet without a trace of bitterness. She was just beautiful. Leo crouched down next to her, wanted to see if he could help, maybe hand her a tool. He marveled at her unusual hobby. He couldn't even fix a bicycle. After a quick check, she confirmed the bike was fine. She put her tools back on the board, each one in its designated spot, perfectly aligned. Even holding a screwdriver, she looked impossibly cool. He watched her standing before the tool wall, organizing everything, and couldn't stop himself from taking a few more pictures of her in profile. Every single one was perfect. She turned and saw him taking photos, a hint of shyness softening her serious expression. Don't. I'm not very photogenic. She always thought she looked stiff and ugly in pictures, that her eyes looked dull. Not as good as in real life. You're right that you look even better in person, Leo said solemnly. But that doesn't mean you're allowed to say you don't look good in pictures. It's just the difference between beautiful and even more beautiful. Stella bit her lip, then immediately stopped, catching herself. She knew that when she did that, this guy in front of her seemed to lose his mind. She pressed her lips together firmly. She pulled off her gloves and hung them on the wall. Let's go then. Wait, Leo said, wanting to wipe the grease from her nose. But then he remembered Jordan's lecture about how some girls who looked like they wore no makeup actually had a thick layer of foundation on. He didn't want to mess anything up, so he asked first. You've got a little smudge on your nose. Can I get it for you? Stella glanced at her reflection in the motorcycle's side mirror, then tilted her face up toward him, letting him wipe it away. He gently brushed the smudge off with his thumb. Confirmed. No foundation, just sunscreen at most. It was a strange feeling. He used to think big chests were sexy. Now, just the tip of Stella's nose felt sexy. The light touch sent a shiver through him. He was a goner. Especially here, in this enclosed space surrounded by tools. His mind couldn't help but wander. He quickly pictured a shirtless, pudgy Jordan playing video games in their dorm room. The image worked. He was calm again. Stella had Leo get on the bike first, and then she once again demonstrated her impossibly long legs, swinging one high over his head to mount the bike in front of him. This time, she was the one who felt self-conscious. The first time, she hadn't thought anything of it. She was just a cool girl who wanted to ride her motorcycle. But this time, with Leo sitting behind her, the thought of his hands wrapping around her waist made her nervous. She turned her head. Are you ready? That turn brought her face even closer to his. Her profile was right in front of him. Gently, Leo leaned in and kissed her. The angle was awkward. They were both on the motorcycle, his arms around her waist, her head turned back. He just wanted to kiss her. The tea had been sweet, but Stella was sweeter. The fluorescent lights of the tool wall hummed above them. The discarded gloves hung limply on their hooks. The boy wanted to kiss her, and the kiss moved from the bike to the garage floor until Leo had her pressed against the tool wall. He could feel the head of a hammer digging into the back of his skull, but he didn't care. Let be a hammer. Maybe it would cool his brain down. He captured her lips, her tongue, exploring, tasting, a self-taught master of this new happiness. His body trembled. Every teenager should fall in love at least once. It was a part of life. Just like the pliers on the wall, the screwdrivers, Phillips and flathead, the saws, the hammers big and small, the clamps, the tweezers, the voltage tester, the impact drill, the whole saw. Stella parked the bike. They were at the library. Before they went in, she spoke with mock seriousness. This time, no funny business. We're only here to read. Leo nodded. Okay, nothing but reading. She couldn't help but swat his arm playfully. But the motion, her palm connecting with his bicep, sent a warmth through her hand. When a girl likes you, she'll hit you, but not really hit you. It's a light tap, a point of contact. If she doesn't like you, she won't even look at you. The old saying, hitting is affection, scolding is love, was really about that specific phase of a relationship. The characters on the library building, washed clean by the rain, seemed to gleam. Inside, the library was just as full as ever. The rain hadn't kept anyone away. The dedicated students were always dedicated. But if you looked closely, you could spot the hidden NPCs of this world. Couples pretending to study. Or maybe they were genuinely studying together. Probably a bit of both. This time, Stella didn't pick a book about foreign cultures. Instead, she chose a guidebook about Bridgeport. When you care about someone, you want to know everything about them. The place they grew up, the local scenery, the culture, every little detail. Leo, feeling like a cat who'd just gotten the cream, was perfectly content. He didn't notice the subtle shift in her choice. Just assumed she enjoyed travelogues. He stood in front of a shelf, browsing titles. Thinking about their upcoming trip to Sean's hometown, he figured he should probably do a little research himself. Sean's hometown was truly remote. There were no dedicated travel books for it. He finally found a book called Crossroads of the Blue Ridge that seemed to have a small section on the area. They took their books and found a spot by the window to read. Stella decided it was safer to sit across from Leo. The library was really not the place for her. That. She felt a blush creep up her neck. Sitting next to him, their arms would surely touch, and she knew she wouldn't be able to focus. A relationship couldn't get in the way of progress. Self-discipline was key. She worried that he'd get distracted and that, after a while, he'd discover she was just an ordinary person and be disappointed. Being with him made her happy, but it also came with a sense of anxiety, a feeling that this was all too dreamlike to be real. Leo, however, was determined to study. His motivation had shifted. At first, he felt a desperate need to learn something, anything, which meant avoiding novels or useless travel books. That utilitarian approach only led him to textbooks and manuals he couldn't get into, wasting his time. The moment you pick up a book demanding something from it, your mind is no longer in the right state for learning. Reading was a part of life. Gaining knowledge and gaining joy were equally important. If you could joyfully gain knowledge, that was even better. He'd recently trained himself to read differently, adjust his mindset, immerse himself in a new world, and let the words flow. It was the most effective way to learn. As soon as he started reading, he was completely absorbed. Stella had been worried he'd be restless, but he wasn't. He didn't fidget or even glance up at her. He was completely focused on his book. It was she who couldn't concentrate, her eyes drifting up to look at him every few minutes. Leo flipped straight to the section on Grassfield Hollow. Sometimes reading a book in order was tedious. If you always started from the beginning, you might still be on page 1 year later. Better to just jump in wherever it looked interesting. The section was short, just a single page, and it was mostly about the county seat, Kangxi County, not the hollow itself, which was just a small village within it. Kangxi County lies in the transition zone between the Appalachian Plateau and the Blue Ridge Mountains. It has a highland climate, with low average temperatures, a short frost-free season, and long hours of sunlight. The population is comprised of various ethnic groups, including descendants of Irish, German, and Scottish immigrants, as well as a significant community of Melungeons. The average annual temperature is 45.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Leo felt a pang of envy. No wonder Sean was always complaining about the heat. His hometown was genuinely cool. The region is rich in biological resources, including spruce, fir, and mountain laurel, with over 200 species of wild medicinal plants. It is also home to more than 150 protected species, including mountain lions, black bears, river otters, and hellbender salamanders. The list of animals was a blur, but he caught the word hellbender. Sean had mentioned that, but it was the next set of numbers that stunned him. He usually skimmed over data in books like this, but recently his accounting studies had made him more sensitive to figures. In 2020, Kangxi County tax revenue was as follows. Corporate income tax, $95,000, a decrease of 54% year over year. Personal income tax, $29,000. This was the tax revenue for an entire county. Some high-earning individuals in the city paid more than that by themselves. Industrial enterprise profits above designated size, $390,000, an increase of 34%. The per capita disposable income of urban residents reached $15,280, an increase of 8% year over year. The per capita disposable income of rural residents reached $9,150, an increase of 5% year over year. Sean was always insecure about being poor. Leo often felt the same. But now he realized that poor and poor were two different things. His uncle could give him a $1,000 graduation gift. In Sean's hometown, the average annual disposable income was just over $9,000, and that average was skewed by the few well-off people at the top. Sean's family probably made even less. He remembered Sean mentioning his uncle was still a bachelor, unable to afford to get married. Kangxi County has 3 main scenic areas: Laurel Mountain, elevation 3,579 feet; Carpet Creek, with grasslands like a blanket dotted with cattle and sheep, a natural pastureland; and Grassfield Hollow, which features a reservoir at the mouth of the valley, flanked by mountains. It contains an old-growth forest and views of the snowy peaks. The accompanying photos were breathtaking, the kind you'd see in National Geographic. But the place was dirt poor. Their home was beautiful, but Sean's parents had to leave it to find work in the city, just to pay for his tuition. For hikers and tourists, it was a paradise. For the people who lived there, it was a remote place with inadequate health care and education. They had to get out. The hometown that can't hold your body, and the new town that can't hold your soul. That was it exactly. After reading this, Leo understood Sean's deep-seated insecurity and why his own casual kindness meant so much to him. In a place of extreme poverty, you weren't just competing for money. You were competing for the resources to survive. Material things mattered immensely. Leo, despite his ordinary background, was careless with money, far less cautious than Jordan or Alex. And he wasn't particularly sharp. He'd always seen Sean as an equal, so he'd been generous without a second thought. Sean was sensitive. He cherished every bit of that thoughtless goodwill. Their views on making TikToks were completely different. For Leo, it was a fun side project. For Sean, it was his entire focus, something he had to pour all his energy into. To truly understand a person, you had to understand where they came from. Meanwhile, Stella was engrossed in the Bridgeport travel guide, her eyes darting across pages filled with descriptions of food and drink. The city, once an industrial powerhouse, had transformed into a foodie and tourist destination. Its people were known for their love of good food, the men for their gentle nature, the women for their fiery spirit. At first, Stella couldn't help but glance at Leo, but seeing him so engrossed in his book, she eventually focused on her own. She was surprised to find the writing style light and funny. It made sense now. When she first met Leo, he seemed so shy and quiet. But as she got to know him, she discovered he wasn't so quiet after all. Sometimes he was surprisingly bold. After finishing the section on Grassfield Hollow, Leo felt a pang of sympathy. He could truly empathize with Sean's insecurity, his timidity even. The difference in their worlds was vast. He looked up and saw the girl across from him turning a page. He caught a glimpse of the cover, Bridgeport Travel Journal. She was reading it with a focused but gentle expression, her brow unfurrowed. Suddenly it clicked. He was reading about Sean's hometown because he was about to go there. Stella was reading about his hometown. She hadn't said she was going to visit, but she wanted to understand him. In that moment, Leo's heart softened and began to beat irregularly again. It turned out that love could make your heart race, even without a kiss or a touch. Affection finds a way to be known. You can't hide being in love, just like you can't hide being poor. He hoped they would both find their way, find their place in the world. Host has read a book with focus, noticing for the first time the meaning behind the data within. Having comprehended a new reading technique, Host is rewarded with novice equestrian skill. Level 1, 10 days. With this skill, Host can ride a horse with ease. The reward had a time limit. Leo understood. That meant that sometime in the next 10 days, he would have an opportunity to ride a horse. Sean's hometown was described as a natural pastureland with horses, cattle, and sheep. It was a real possibility. The thought was kind of exciting. He'd ridden a horse once before, a small pony at the zoo his parents took him to as a kid. But he'd never ridden a real, full-sized horse. Growing up in the city, there was never a chance. He wondered if Sean knew how to ride. He'd have to ask him later. Stella thought the book was fun. She took a picture of the cover, planning to buy a copy for herself. She liked coming to the library with Leo. She'd seen that viral video of him reading alone, a close-up of his profile, looking so serious, so lonely. She wanted to be with him, to be a part of that. After they finished reading, they went downstairs. "Stella, can you ride a horse?" Leo asked. "I can," she said. "I took lessons when I was a kid. But then a friend of mine fell off and broke her arm and leg, so my mom wouldn't let me go anymore. My dad would take me secretly, though, so I'm not too bad." Since they were already near the library, Stella decided they should ride over to the Honors College campus for lunch. It didn't matter where they ate. It was just an excuse to spend more time together. Leo had only been to the Honors College a few times for university-wide ceremonies or the occasional special lecture. Even the student strip over there was wider and more upscale than the one by their main campus. But it was also quieter, with fewer people milling about. It was Leo's turn to pay, part of their unspoken agreement, to take turns treating each other. Thanks to the money from his Uncle Clay, he could afford to take her out to eat with some confidence, as long as they didn't go to places like the Gilded Manor. Or rather, they could go a couple of times, and then he'd have to eat ramen for a month. Campus eateries were a safe bet. Even the expensive ones weren't outrageous. Stella ended up choosing a surprisingly down-to-earth chili place. A bowl was $10, or $18 with extra meat and toppings. 2 bowls and a side of fried jalapenos came to less than $50. In the real world, that was a steal. Of course, if you were a government employee with access to a subsidized cafeteria, you could probably get a full meal for $5. Leo wasn't sure if it was because he was eating with Stella, but he thought the chili was delicious. They sat near a big industrial fan that periodically blasted them with cool air as they ate the steaming, spicy chili. His appetite had grown recently. He was eating much more than he used to. He felt healthier, too. Before, sitting and playing games for hours would make his legs go numb and his back ache. Now his legs felt nimble, and his back rarely bothered him. The time dilation buff was part of it, allowing him to schedule his days better, but the daily runs were the main factor. He just felt more positive, more open. Run more, stress less. They'd arrive a little early, so the restaurant was still quiet. Around noon, the lunch rush would start. For now, Only a few students hurried past outside. After they ate, Stella took him for a ride. They both put on their helmets. Hers was black with a white trim, and his was black with a yellow trim. They took off just before the campus got crowded. But Stella didn't head back to the dorm. She drove off the Honors College campus, through a small village, and up a winding road that led into the hills. Leo had been here before, during his freshman year. Back then, he was restless and eager to explore, joining a bunch of random clubs and going on group outings. And yet, somehow, he'd managed to stay single. He must have been a late bloomer. He remembered there was a small chapel at the top of the hill, next to a clearing that led up to a small gazebo. He also remembered a girl asking him to climb up to the gazebo with her, but he didn't know her well, so he'd refused. What was wrong with him? He'd gone up later with Sean and Jordan. It was a tiny structure surrounded by pine trees and stone steps, but the view was incredible. You could see the entire campus. The last time Leo had been here, it was with a group of at least 10 people. The wind whistled past his ears as they sped up the hill, quickly leaving the walking couple behind. At the top, near the chapel, there was a small, dusty parking area. Stella parked the bike under the shade of a tree. "Do you have any religious objections? Or anything?" she asked. Leo shook his head. "Nope. Whoever's willing to watch over me is fine by me. I'm not picky. Want to go inside?" Stella asked, a smile playing on her lips. She remembered when she first met him, how he'd been so flustered while eating his breakfast bowl, he barely dared to make eye contact. But once he got to know him, he was actually quite funny. They entered the chapel. It had a very lived-in feel. It must have been Catholic, because to the left of the entrance was a small alcove with a statue of St. Francis. Next to it was a small room with candles for sale. A sign said, "Please scan to pay." A set of votive candles was $5, a price clearly set for students. In the center of the nave was a small planter filled with blooming impatiens. In front of that was a large stand for lighting the candles, and beyond that, up a few steps, was the main altar. Leo didn't know much about religion and couldn't identify the saints depicted in the stained glass, but St. Francis was easy enough to recognize. The figures on the altar looked solemn and stern. In front of each were offering boxes. It was noon, and a middle-aged man in simple robes with a neat mustache and short hair was sitting at a table in the corner. He had a stack of red paper, a deck of tarot cards, and what looked like a wishbone on the table in front of him. The cards and the wishbone were clearly tools of his trade and his income. "Want to get a reading?" Stella asked. Leo nodded. Why not? He'd always had decent luck. He remembered winning a shopping spree prize from a spinning wheel at the mall with his mom once. After that, she tried to drag him shopping with her every time he came home, right up until the mall went out of business. The man saw them approach and gave them a pious bow, his hands pressed together. Then he extended his palm, revealing a laminated card with a QR code. "You two are clearly kindred spirits. A reading is $10 each, 20 total. You can scan here." Not bad, Leo thought. $10 wasn't expensive at all. His grandmother used to go to psychics who charged hundreds. He dutifully scanned the code and paid. He handed the deck of cards to Stella, letting her draw first. But she took it very seriously. She first went back and bought 2 sets of candles. She had Leo light one with her. They lit the candles together and knelt to pray. It felt a little awkward. Leo wasn't a believer, but he didn't know why Stella, who had everything, seemed to believe in this stuff so earnestly. So he knelt beside her, his mind wandering. He didn't make a wish. He'd read a horror manga once that said, you should never make wishes casually. If they don't come true, it's one thing. If they do, they often come with a price you can't afford. You might wish for money now, but what if the price is your health? When your health is gone, no amount of money can buy it back. But seeing how serious Stella was, he kept his thoughts to himself and just knelt there with her. After they finished, they went back to the man with the cards. This time, Stella shuffled the deck carefully and drew a card. Then she had Leo draw one. Stella drew the Empress. Leo drew the Sun. They handed the cards to the mustache man. He looked at the Empress and exclaimed, "A fortunate draw. Beauty, abundance, fertility, and prosperity. A most auspicious card." Leo felt a flicker of surprise. This stuff might actually have something to it. He suddenly got nervous. What if his card was terrible? He handed his card, the Sun, to the man. The man looked at it and read, "Success, radiance, and abundance. The sun shines upon you, and you will achieve great things." Also a most auspicious card. He looked up. "Would you two like a detailed interpretation? $30 each, or $50 for the pair." Stella and Leo both declined. They were college students. They could handle their own reading comprehension. Stella carefully tucked the little red paper slips with the interpretations into an inner pocket of her bag. Leo didn't have a bag, so he asked her to hold his too. After that, Stella was in a fantastic mood, practically bouncing as they walked. The little tuft of hair tied back on her head bobbed up and down. They held hands as they walked up the path toward the gazebo. "You that happy?" Leo asked. "What if we drawn bad cards?" "Then we'd redraw," Stella said matter-of-factly, "until we got good ones." After lunch, Director Penelope Hayes and Professor Luke Hoffman took a nap. Penelope had a quirk. She couldn't fall asleep if someone was in bed with her. She'd get energized and start talking Luke's ear off. So he had to wait until she was asleep before he could go to bed. She was also a light sleeper with high standards for her sleeping environment. The pillows had to have a faint, woody scent, and she kept a piece of sandalwood on her nightstand. She'd probably had it so rough when she was a struggling director, sleeping on floors and in cars, that now she couldn't sleep anywhere comfortably. She was deeply grateful for her husband. There was a time when she was severely depressed, when her films were bombing and the critics were savaging her. Every day he had dragged her outside, forcing her to go for walks and get some sun. Having seen so many relationships in the entertainment industry fall apart, she cherished the man beside her. Since their nap would be short, they slept in separate rooms. Luke had his own quirks, of course. He hated chores, wasn't fond of showering, loved to snack and leave crumbs everywhere, and dropped his stinky socks on the floor. But Penelope never nagged him about it. They had a cleaner who followed him around tidying up. It was amazing how many potential arguments could be solved with money. This, he thought, was happiness. After their nap, they were sipping tea when a guest arrived. When Penelope was home, the house was often full of visitors. Luke didn't have many guests, aside from his students. Lately, Penelope had been prepping for a new film. It was a big project with plenty of funding and backing from major studios. The man who arrived today was an old acquaintance of hers. In any industry, if you stick around long enough, everyone becomes an old acquaintance. "Penelope, so sorry to interrupt you two lovebirds." "Howard, don't be silly. You're welcome anytime. Come, have some tea. One of my husband's students just brought over a wonderful batch." "Fantastic. I'm in for a treat. The last time I had tea at Professor Hoffman's, the memory of it lingered for weeks. It ruined every meal I had afterward. I've been dreaming of it for years. What a lucky day for me." Drinking tea was the perfect cover for a meeting. If a conversation stalled, you could just take a sip and let the moment pass. Penelope hated the smell of smoke and worried about her husband's cigar habit. He was younger than her, but he was a homebody and not in the best shape. So, while they napped, the cleaner had aired out the tea room, wiped everything down, and taken out the trash, leaving no trace of the smell. The room was a man's paradise. It had a full humidor, a wine rack, and a tea collection. There was even more in the basement cellar, but this was where Luke kept his daily favorites. Lately, he'd been obsessed with single-origin oolongs ever since Leo had brewed some for him. He'd gone through his collection, but none of them tasted as good as the one Leo had brought. It was a small batch, which was probably why it was so good. That was the thing with fine tea. When he first got into it, he found a tea he loved and bought out the merchant's entire remaining stock. But when he brewed it at home, it just wasn't the same. Tea is incredibly sensitive to its environment, humidity, temperature, even ambient smells. Even tea from the same batch can taste different. So, even with money, you couldn't always get the exact flavor you were chasing. Every cup of good tea was one less cup in the world. But that also had its benefits. It made you treat it with respect. You wouldn't just carelessly brew it. You'd boil the water to the perfect temperature, light some incense, clear the table, and compose your mind before you began. And that made it taste even better. People were the same. If you present yourself as a fine tea, people will treat you with more care. If you're just an everyday tea bag, they'll just throw you in a mug. And if you're a $10 a pound bulk tea, you'll end up in a used glass jar, steeping all day, or worse, used to make tea eggs. A good mood and a good cup of tea, that was a sublime combination. "Professor Hoffman, your tea-making skills have improved," Howard said. "I've never tasted anything this good anywhere else." When someone complimented Luke, Penelope would beam like she'd won an award. Everyone in their circle knew the secret. Praising her husband was more effective than praising her directly. But Howard, a veteran talent agent, wasn't here just for tea. People were busy these days. Dropping by for a casual chat was reserved for close friends, and their relationship was purely professional. If he had that kind of time, he'd rather be at home drinking a $3 bottle of iced tea than visiting someone else's house for a cup of $100 an ounce tea. After a few more pleasantries, Howard got to the point. "Penelope, I've got a real gem for you, a promising new talent. I was hoping you could give him a leg up. He's the real deal, perfect in every way. And we keep a tight leash on him, so there's no risk of any scandals down the line." "Howard, I trust your eye for talent," Penelope said. "But the cast for my new film is pretty much set. I've had agreements with some of these actors for years. It's not a major role. He's a newcomer, but the agency has high hopes for him. I remember your new script has a small part for a team master. It's not a lot of screen time. Please, Penelope, don't say no just yet. I know you might have someone in mind, but we're all trying to make the best film possible. Finding the perfect fit for the role is what matters. Just take a look. Howard pulled out his tablet, opened a video, and handed it to Penelope. It was a short clip, clearly shot on a professional set. The scene was antique and elegant. A handsome young man sat brewing tea. He wore a simple white robe, and his movements with the teapot were graceful and practiced. Just one look at his face, and you knew why Howard had made this trip. It was a remarkable face. There were no ugly people in the industry, but this one stood out. He was fresh, not yet jaded, and incredibly photogenic. Clean, comfortable to look at. His tea-making technique was a bit too deliberate, though. Seeing that Penelope had finished watching, Howard quickly added, "This kid has real potential, Penelope. Just give him a chance." He even took classes to prepare for this role. Of course, he's no match for Professor Hoffman. If it weren't for the age difference, Professor Hoffman himself would be the best choice for the part. His tea isn't just delicious, it's an art form. Howard laid it on thick, praising his client and then lavishing praise on Penelope's husband. He knew how to play the game. Penelope had to admit, the young man in the video was impressive. He had a rare, innocent look in his eyes, and he was undeniably handsome. Normally, she would have given away a small role like this as a favor. She and Howard had worked together for years, but she had already promised the part to her husband's student, Leo. He was an amateur, but his tea-making was genuinely good. It was because she'd been so impressed by his skill, it was rare to find someone who could brew tea better than her husband, that she'd offered him the part. She wanted a real team master for the role. However, the face of the young man in the looping video was undeniably striking. Howard, who had been confident he'd seal the deal, saw the hesitation on Penelope's face. He knew what it meant. Someone else was already in the running. It was common in the industry. The rumors you heard about actors stealing roles from each other were mostly true. It wasn't always about talent. It was a game of connections and resources. No one was irreplaceable. Luke, being the devoted husband, had one primary duty: to never let his wife be put in a difficult position. Seeing her slight frown, he spoke up. "Howard, have some more tea. Do you like it?" "It's excellent. Truly delicious," Howard said, taking a sip. "The aroma is incredible, and it's so smooth. Even a novice like me can taste the sweet aftertaste." A student of mine brought it over a few days ago. Luke said, "He's quite skilled at brewing tea as well. My wife appreciates both good tea and raw talent, so she wanted to let him try out for the role." Back in the dorm, Sean was using an empty glass peach jar from one of Jordan's snacks to brew a large batch of tea. He'd been drinking it constantly lately to stay awake. Editing videos and touching up photos required focus and energy, and if he didn't have a strong cup of tea, he'd be asleep in minutes. Coffee was too expensive and didn't taste good anyway. Back home, wild tea grew everywhere. They just pick it, brew it strong, and drink it. It was bitter but effective. They even drank it for headaches and fevers, like a cure-all. Following his priority list, Sean first edited the video of Leo brewing tea. He'd been careful while filming, so there weren't many stray shots to cut. He made one version with just Leo and another that included Dr. Sterling teaching him and Professor Reed drinking the tea. Since starting the TikTok account, he'd gotten into the habit of editing raw footage right away, creating a library of clips he could use later. He named each file and added the date, a system he'd learned in his information retrieval class. It was one of the few useful things he'd picked up from his major. He treated each video file like a book in a library, making it easy to find anything he needed. It also helped that his computer was old and slow. If he didn't keep his files organized, it would crash. Leo had told him to send the video to Professor Hoffman once it was done. Sean had his contact info, but he felt awkward sending it himself. He'd never even spoken to the professor. It would be better to send it to Leo and let him forward it. Meanwhile, Leo and Stella were standing in the gazebo at the top of the hill. The summer had passed, and the trees around it had grown thick and lush. If some kind soul hadn't cleared away some of the brush, they wouldn't have been able to see the campus below. A few years had made a huge difference. Leo remembered coming here as a freshman when the trees were just saplings and the gazebo was brand new. Now, the trees were dense and green, and the gazebo itself showed the patina of time. Some things grow, some things age. They stood side by side, looking out at the panoramic view of the university. From the ground, the campus felt like a random maze of crisscrossing paths. But from up here, you could see it had been designed with intention. The two circular buildings on the Honors College campus, which looked unique from below, formed a striking pattern from this vantage point. They looked like the center of a giant Celtic knot, with the faculty housing buildings arranged in a perfect circle around them. Leo wondered if it was a coincidence or intentional. The end of science, it seemed, was mysticism. Just then, Sean sent in the videos. Leo watched them both and decided to send the longer one to Professor Hoffman. It told a better story, showing the learning process with Dr. Sterling, which felt more organic and compelling. Stella watched the video over his shoulder. "You know how to do a tea ceremony?" she asked, surprised. "My mom loves that stuff. She's obsessed. She even bought this charming old tea house once, but then all her friends started showing up, and she got tired of playing hostess, so she closed it." Ironically, the area was later redeveloped into a major tourist district, and the property value skyrocketed. Leo thought of Stella's mother, the formidable woman in the Bentley. She liked tea? Maybe he could make some for her, and she would open up to him? Nope, nope, nope. Terrifying thought. "Well, maybe I can make some for your mom sometime," he said. "And for you, anytime you want." "Okay," Stella said. She wasn't into the ceremony herself, but her mother, Victoria, had wanted her to be a proper young lady and had taught her how to appreciate good tea. Over at Professor Hoffman's, the conversation about the role was ongoing. Just then, Leo's message came through. "My student just sent over a video of him brewing tea," Luke announced. "Perfect timing. Let's all have a look." The tea room was Luke's sanctuary, full of hidden gadgets. He pressed a button on a remote, and a 100-inch screen descended from the ceiling. The smart glass windows darkened, transforming the sunroom into a home theater with a state-of-the-art Bang and Olufsen sound system. The video started, and a clear voice filled the room. Howard, the veteran agent, sat up straighter. "Whose new talent is this?" That voice. It was incredible. Clean, crisp, with a youthful quality that would make teenage girls swoon. He vaguely recalled a local college influencer on TikTok with a similar voice. When the video appeared, he could tell it was shot without any beauty filters. The kid was brewing tea, looking a bit older than Howard's own prodigy. The face wasn't as conventionally handsome as his new actors. Howard would rate his own guy a solid 8. 5 and 9. 5 with professional styling. But this student had a clean, pleasant quality. An 8 maybe. Then he recognized him. It was that kid whose singing had gone viral locally. The setting didn't look like a tea house. It looked like someone's home. But the shelves in the background were lined with what looked like extremely expensive porcelain cups. Howard knew a bit about them. Some contemporary pieces could sell for tens of thousands of dollars. And the robe the student was wearing was exquisitely detailed, looking more like a museum piece than a costume. The production value of the background and wardrobe alone made Howard hold his tongue. He'd assumed this might be a rival agent's new talent, but the kid wasn't even wearing makeup. This was his natural look. An 8 without any styling meant he had serious potential. Penelope and Luke watched intently. Luke's eyes widened. The kid looked even better on screen than he had in person. Did he have one of those faces that just lights up on camera? That was a rare gift, the kind of thing that meant the universe was practically shoving success down your throat. Luke, however, wasn't focused on his looks. He was focused on the fact that the video showed Leo as a complete beginner, learning step by step from Dr. Arthur Sterling. Whoa, this kid was shrewder than he looked. Last time, Leo's technique had been flawless, like he'd been doing it for years. Now he was playing the novice, getting a lesson from Dr. Sterling himself. Luke's own National Team Master certification had been awarded by Dr. Sterling, who gets a personal lesson from the man who sets the national standards. It was like having a Fields Medal winner teach you your multiplication tables. An absolute power move. Howard, having done his research on Luke to better pitch his client, also knew who Dr. Sterling was. Seeing Luke's shocked expression, he realized the old man in the video was a very big deal. Penelope knew Dr. Sterling too. She'd once tried to arrange for Luke to study with him, but Dr. Sterling had been too busy. She turned to Howard with a regretful smile. "Howard, it looks like I won't be able to use your new actor after all. We'll have to find another project to collaborate on in the future." They didn't kiss in the gazebo. You couldn't just kiss every time you were in a gazebo. Leo was starting to get a feel for the subtle rules. When it was okay, when it was not okay, and when it was absolutely forbidden. Right now, with Stella so engrossed in the view, it felt like a no-go. She was taking pictures with her phone, completely focused. Judging by her technique, Leo figured she was a total amateur. Her phone didn't even have any beauty filter apps, which was refreshingly rare. Since kissing was off the table, Leo's brain started working again. He gently guided her. "Here, try zooming out a bit to get the whole campus in the frame. See how that looks, and try shooting through these leaves so they frame the shot." His instructions soon turned into him holding her from behind, his hands over hers on the phone. They were supposed to be taking pictures, but it quickly devolved into hugging and cuddling. Just as Leo thought the mood had shifted enough for a kiss, Stella spoke. My mom says all good photographers are players, because it's impossible for a girl to say no to someone who takes good pictures of them. Leo froze. That's not true, he thought. He had an intermediate photography skill, but the only young woman he'd taken pictures of was Stella. And Professor Reed and Dr. Sterling. He'd seen Paige Kennedy asleep on the couch once and thought she looked pretty, but he hadn't taken a picture. That would have been creepy. That's a bit of an overgeneralization, he said. Skill and character are two different things. Stella agreed. Victoria Vance also said that guys who ride motorcycles were thugs. By bringing her mom up, she was delivering a clear message. Not happening. They held each other for a little while longer, which was its own kind of wonderful. It wasn't kissing, but the physical contact, the feeling of closeness and security was just as good. Though they'd only been together a short time, Leo was already dreading the upcoming break. They started walking down the hill hand in hand. Are you going home for fall break? Stella asked. No, the guys and I are all going to Sean's hometown. What about you? My mom bought tickets. We're going to France. Leo felt a pang of inadequacy. France. It was so far away. He'd never even considered going there. He felt like a frog in a well, content with his little patch of sky, never wanting to leave the familiar safety of his world. I've been cramming French lately, Stella added. That's cool. Study hard. Maybe we can go together sometime, and you can be my translator. The words formed in his mind, the polite, easy thing to say. Like, let's get lunch sometime, a promise with no date. But he couldn't say it to Stella. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. A trip to France was so far beyond his family's means. He suddenly understood why people said you should date someone from a similar background. Otherwise, you run out of things to talk about. She talks about Argentina, you talk about the Appalachians. It was like they were speaking different languages. He pushed the thought away. Tomorrow's problems were for tomorrow's Leo. Today, he just had to live in the moment. He felt like Stella was a kind of poison, one he willingly drank. Each dose brought relief, but made the addiction stronger. The walk down the mountain was long. The path was flanked by pine trees and other small shrubs. He'd always associated pine forests with cemeteries, like the one near his grandfather's old house. But holding Stella's hand, the forest felt warm and safe, like a protective embrace. His mood changed the scenery. The crunch of dry leaves under their feet, the sound of their breathing. They didn't need to speak. When they reached the chapel again, they saw a couple taking pictures with Stella's motorcycle. The guy would pose, and the girl would take a photo, and they'd switch. Stella waited patiently for them to leave. When they were finally back at the bike, she turned to him. Do you want to ride? I can teach you. Leo remembered his permanent novice motor vehicle operation skill. He'd gotten it and never had a chance to use it. It turned out the system had been preparing him for her. I have a little experience, but I've never ridden a bike like this. You'll have to show me. No problem, Stella smiled. I'm a great teacher. I'm not mean at all. Her dad had hired a private instructor for her. She was a good driver on both bikes and in cars. She'd even learned to sail in elementary school and had her boating license. Her next goal was to learn to fly a plane, a plan she had to keep secret from her mother. Victoria would have a fit. Stella felt her personality was a bit warped from her upbringing. Her father treated her like the son he'd always wanted, while her mother forbade her from playing with boys. As a result, she never quite figured out what girls like to do and had very few friends. In a way, Leo was her first real, close friend, not just a boyfriend. She was clumsily trying to share the things she loved with him, even if she knew some topics brought the conversation to a halt. Leo was oblivious to her inner turmoil. To him, she was the girl who had everything. The roar of the engine shattered his thoughts. It was a thrilling sound that made his heart race. I think I got this, he said, but maybe I should take a quick spin by myself first, just in case I fall. He swung the leg over, testing the feel of it. It was a good fit. Question. My girlfriend is the same height as me. What do I do? Asking for a friend. Answer. You will one day have a child who is also the same height, and the three of you will be perfectly matched. That sounded kind of nice, actually. But Stella shook her head. Let me ride with you. It'll be safer with me here. Safer? Leo thought. How is that safer? I'm a total beginner. But she insisted, and he couldn't say no. New couples were always doing reckless things. Luckily, Leo still had a bit of sense. He trusted his novice-level skill enough to believe he wouldn't end up on the local news. Are you sure about this? Yeah, Stella nodded. This way, we can say we've trusted each other with our lives. Leo's heart skipped a beat. She was good. Hold on tight, he said. He rode slowly and steadily, responsible not only for himself, but for her. But riding was even more exhilarating than being a passenger. The wind rushed past, the scenery blurred, and it felt like flying. He was so caught up in the thrill that he didn't notice when Stella wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head against his back. The sun was warm, the trees were green, and the roar of the engine drowned out the chirping of insects. Leo felt his heart open up, and he laughed like a child. "Are you scared?" he yelled over the wind. "Not at all," she yelled back. She loved riding, and she loved that the boy she liked was the one driving. "Leo, promise me something." "What?" The engine noise almost swallowed her words. "Never back down for any reason. If you take one step toward me, I'll take two toward you." "What did you say?" "I like you." "I like you too." Host has demonstrated responsible driving, comprehending the importance of safety first and reducing the probability of premature demise. Rewarded with buff, composure, permanent. This buff will help Host remain calm in stressful situations, projecting an aura of reliability and trustworthiness. Increases favorability with others by +1. Leo felt a flicker of unease. A composure buff? That sounded exactly like Alex Young. Was he destined to become the very person he used to dislike? Freshman year Leo had found Alex to be an insufferable snob. He reluctantly climbed off the bike. He couldn't dismount as gracefully as Stella with her long-legged pivot. She seemed extra clingy today. Had she really confessed him back there? The thought made his heart race again. Maybe he wasn't the only one feeling anxious about the upcoming separation. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Sean in their group chat. "Sean, good news, I got the tickets. 4 seats on the Greyhound. Bad news, it's for the 30th. You guys in? It's a 10+ hour ride. I usually just get a regular seat, but I splurged this time. Jordan, okay by me. I can sleep anywhere. Alex, confirmed. Leo, sound good." The news hit him with a fresh wave of urgency. He thought they were leaving on the 1st. Leaving on the 30th meant one less day with Stella. He followed her back into the garage, hoping for a goodbye kiss, but no luck. Did she have a 1 kiss-a-day rule or something? He blushed, his mind wandering to places it shouldn't. Stella saw his face, turned red again, and wondered what on earth he was thinking about. But she held firm. Things were moving too fast. She felt like she was losing control. They walked back to the main fountain and said their goodbyes there. It was one of Stella's little rules. He wasn't allowed to walk her all the way to her dorm. With his nap time gone, Leo decided to head straight to their usual classroom. He could use the time dilation buff to turn an 8-minute power nap into a solid half-hour rest. Then he'd study accounting for an hour before taking Moose for a walk. He was going to miss that dog. He found a classroom, surprised to see 3 other groups already there. The 2 familiar grad school prep NPCs and a new couple. He almost turned around, but he'd grown fond of this room. The view from the window was perfect for staring at the fat little sparrow that perched on the telephone wire outside. He sat down and immediately put his head on the desk to sleep. The 2 grad school prep students glanced up, saw the king of posers had arrived alone, without a girl or a cameraman, and promptly went back to their books. The new couple, however, was less considerate. They were whispering and giggling. "Stop," the girl would whisper, followed by a light slap on the arm and more giggles. Leo cringed. Was that what he and Stella sounded like? It was so obnoxious. The noise was making it hard to sleep. He was about to put in his earbuds when one of the grad school prep guys, the one Leo thought was a silent NPC, spoke up. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Could you please keep it down?" The couple quieted down for a moment, then started up again. The rustling and whispering were impossible to ignore. Leo forced himself to rest for a few minutes, then sat up. The couple was still there, and now the girl was practically lying in the guy's lap. Leo glared. "I have to sleep sitting up, and you get to lie down? The injustice." He put on his old black-framed glasses, took out a small notebook and pen, and walked over to their desk. Channeling his new composure buff, he asked in a calm, authoritative voice, "Excuse me, what are your names, and what department are you in? Who's your faculty advisor?" The boy stammered, and the girl shot upright. They mumbled something about business or finance, then quickly packed their bags and fled. The 2 grad school prep students chuckled. The guy turned around. "I'm Colin Edwards, Jr., Business Management." The girl with glasses from the other table introduced herself too. "Wendy Liu, Senior, Marketing." "Leo Foster," he replied. "Senior, Information Management." After the brief introductions, they all returned to their studies. At the same time, a notification popped into Leo's head. "Congratulations, Host has made progress in capturing the silver tier target, Colin Edwards. Favorability has reached 70. Please continue your efforts. Colin Edwards, age 20. Net worth, $4,900. No, $5,100. $5,800. $5,000, $4,500, $3,700. Academic ability, 73. Appearance, 73. Leo blinked. Why was his net worth fluctuating so wildly? Colin Edwards is a day trader. He has decided to apply to grad school due to recent market volatility. Whoa, a stock market guru in their midst. You never knew what secrets people were hiding. You wonder about the other student. Did he get any points with her? Winnie Lou currently has a boyfriend from high school. They are planning to apply to the same graduate school. However, her boyfriend also currently has another girlfriend. The system has determined that as Wendy has not broken up with him, she does not qualify as single. Leo felt a pang of sympathy for the girl with the round glasses, studying so diligently. Should he tell her? Or was it better to let her find out on her own? He decided to respect her destiny. Maybe working hard was the best thing for her right now, regardless of the outcome. He sat down and opened his book. The concentration in the room was palpable. Outside, the fat sparrow chirped. Leo would study for a while, then adjust his glasses and watch the bird for a moment before diving back in. Studying made him feel calm, happy, and centered. Stella got back to her dorm and had just started unpacking when she heard a faint, pained groan. She realized Jessica Monroe was in the room. The other two roommates were out. Peeking through the gap in Jessica's bed curtain, she saw her curled in a ball, clutching her stomach. It was her period. Jessica seemed to have it rough every month. Stella was lucky. Victoria had taken her to a traditional Chinese medicine doctor for years, so her periods were usually painless. But Jessica's were so bad her face would turn pale. Sometimes she had to take painkillers just to get through an exam. Seeing her clenching her stomach, Stella went to the kitchenette, boiled some water, and dissolved a cube of ginger brown sugar, something her mom always kept stock for her, into a mug. She placed it on the small table by Jessica's bed. "Drink this," she said softly. "It might help." Jessica, her lips tinged with blue, struggled to sit up. She saw the hot mug and whispered a thank you. Her period had started unexpectedly at lunch. She'd asked her other roommates to bring her back some food, but they'd said they had plans and wouldn't be back for a while. She was hungry and in agony. She didn't have a mother to teach her about these things. Hers had run off when she was young. Her dad was clueless. One winter in middle school, she'd worked in a restaurant, washing dishes in ice-cold water without proper clothing. Her body had never been the same since. She downed the hot, sweet drink in one go. The warmth spread through her, easing the cramps. Then she noticed 2 slips of yellow paper on Stella's desk. "What are those?" she asked. "Can I look?" Ever since their first day as freshmen, Jessica always asked before touching Stella's things. "Sure," Stella said, unzipping her jacket. "They're fortunes from a chapel I visited. It was just for fun." "You believe in that stuff?" "The richer you are, the more superstitious you get," Stella quipped. "You're afraid of losing it all." Jessica casually picked up the slips. Then her eyes widened as she read the 2 fortunes. Stella, beauty, abundance, fertility, and prosperity. Leo, success, radiance, and abundance. You will achieve great things. She froze. The word transported her back to a memory, to a boy who had drawn a fortune for her once. She'd been so angry she'd kicked him, but the words of the fortune were seared into her brain like a curse. Waves upon waves, trapped in poverty. To move is worse than to stay still, a talent with no fate. She didn't believe in it. It was all fake. How could a few words define a person's life? If everything was predetermined, what was the point of living? "What's wrong?" Stella asked, noticing tears welling up in Jessica's eyes. "Is it that bad?" Jessica nodded. "It really hurts. Lie down. I'll rub your stomach for you. My mom gets cramps sometimes, and I know how to help." Before Jessica could protest, Stella gently pushed her back onto the bed. Perhaps falling in love had softened her, made her more tender than usual. As Stella's warm hands pressed gently on her abdomen, the pain really did begin to subside, but the tears flowed even more freely. Her dad had called a few days ago. He found a new girlfriend. He told her not to come home for fall break. She didn't have in her to be cruel, but she didn't have the right to be kind, either. It felt like there was no place for her in the entire world. "Moose, come on," Leo called. The golden retriever bounded toward him, a furry missile of pure joy. After an intense study session, playing with Moose was the perfect release. Moose's belly was looking a little less round today, but he still planted himself firmly in front of the hot dog cart and refused to move, his tail wagging expectantly. He looked like a little kid having a tantrum in a toy store. Leo bought a hot dog for himself and 2 corn dogs for Moose, worried that the dog's stomach was still sensitive. Man and dog ate in perfect harmony. Leo remembered Moose's system tag for him, a not-so-strong, genetically deficient fur, but smart and kind golden retriever puppy. That shameless dog was even trying to pass as a puppy. The relish on the hot dog was surprisingly good. There was a lot of great food on campus. He wondered if he'd ever find stuff this good again after graduation. The vendor, a man with a thick Boston accent, was bragging to the person next to him about his condo in Florida. The students listening didn't seem impressed. For kids living 8 to a dorm, a house was an abstract concept. It was only after you entered the real world and faced the wrath of a future mother-in-law that you understood the importance of real estate. Leo felt a little bad for the guy. He had a beach condo but had to spend his days here, looking at a sea of students instead of the actual sea, slinging hot dogs to pay off the mortgage, one corn dog at a time. If Leo had a beach condo, he'd be on the beach, making hot dogs for himself. A college senior couldn't understand the happiness of a 40-something man, and vice versa. The vendor probably looked at Leo, aimlessly wandering around with a dog, and saw a kid with no ambition. They ambled across the campus lawn and ended up by the lake. Leo sat down, and Moose sat beside him. No beach condo, but a lake view wasn't bad. They both sat with their backs straight, watching the setting sun paint the water red. Leo's phone rang, startling Moose so much his leg twitched. It was Professor Hoffman. "Leo, my boy, what are you up to?" "Professor, I'm just walking a dog." There was a pause. "You sound a little too relaxed, kid," Luke thought. "Well, your mother and I saw the video you sent. It was excellent. The plan is to start shooting right after fall break. We'll let you know the exact date. Are you going back to Bridgeport for break?" Leo wondered how the professor knew where he was from. "Thanks, Professor. Actually, my whole dorm is going to my roommate Sean's hometown for the break. He says there's a lot of wild tea and stuff there. If I find anything good, I'll bring some back for you and Director Hayes." "That would be wonderful. Oh, and remember, you owe me a photo shoot when you get back." "I saw Dr. Sterling's new profile picture. That was you, wasn't it?" Luke sounded a little jealous. D-Day met Dr. Sterling in person and found him a bit weaselly. But in that photo, he looked roguishly handsome, a perfect blend of intellect, artistry, and wealth. And Professor Reed, who was usually so intimidating, looked gentle and wise in her portrait. "It probably was," Leo explained. "We filmed the video at Professor Reed's place today, and she had Dr. Sterling come over to teach me, so I took a few pictures of them." That explained it. Dr. Sterling wouldn't even make time for his own wife, but he dropped everything for Evelyn Reed. This kid had some connections. "All right, well, we'll talk when you get back. When are you leaving?" "We bought tickets for the 30th. "The 30th? I have to be on campus that day anyway. I'll have my driver, Walt, take you guys to the bus station. Just text him your departure time later." "Oh, okay. Thanks, Professor." After hanging up, Leo opened his Instagram. Sure enough, Dr. Sterling had posted a new photo, a side-by-side of his old picture with Professor Reed and the new one. The caption read, "Time is ruthless, but friendship is not." Professor Reed had commented below, "Speak for yourself, Arthur. I can be pretty ruthless." Leo liked the post. Professor Reed, username Moonlit Lotus, had also posted, but she'd shared a picture of her teapot, not the portrait. Caption, "A moment of peace." Leo guessed she was sending the portrait to her friends individually. A targeted flex. He liked her post, too. He felt a nudge and looked down to see Moose staring at him with soulful, reproachful eyes. "Woof, woof. Why are you playing with that metal brick? Let's play ball." Leo somehow understood him perfectly. He put his phone away and pulled out the tattered tennis ball. Moose started spinning in happy circles. Leo threw the ball as far as he could. Moose tore after it, a golden blur, catching it just after it bounced and sprinting back, dropping it at Leo's feet. "Woof, woof, woof, I'm awesome, right?" Again, Leo ruffled the bald spot on Moose's head and threw the ball again. This time, Moose moved like lightning, leaping into the air and catching the ball mid-flight. It was an incredibly athletic move. Hard to believe a dog this cool was single. After a few more throws, Leo took some action shots of Moose and sent the best one to Stella, a picture of the dog looking triumphant with the ball in his mouth. Moose, deciding he'd had enough exercise but Leo hadn't, picked up the ball, trotted to the middle of the lawn, and started barking. Leo sighed. "I don't want to run unless you have a frisbee." But at Moose's insistence, Leo ended up chasing him around the lawn until they were both panting, their backs covered in grass clippings. As the sun set, they happily headed back. On the way, they passed a tiny poodle that yapped ferociously, its legs trembling. Moose ignored it completely. He said a long, sad goodbye to the dog, rubbing his bald spot until it shone, before finally heading back to his dorm. Host has diligently played with a pet, providing it with healthy exercise and earning its approval. Reward. Host's height will increase by 0.1 cm, can be applied anywhere. Leo, now officially 5'8", for foot, felt his phone vibrate repeatedly. He opened it to see the class group chat blowing up. Ms. Miller, their advisor, had posted a message. Class meeting tonight. Attendance is mandatory for everyone on campus. A flood of replies followed. Got it. Got it. Got it. Leo added his own to the pile. Got it. Seniors they may be, but they were still students. The ones who had already started internships had a bit more of a world-weary edge to them and were less inclined to listen to their advisor. But most of the students still on campus showed up obediently. It had been a while since they'd all been together, and there was a strange mix of familiarity and distance in the air. Even Megan was there. She actually said hello to them, which was a shock. It used to be Sean chasing after her for a sliver of attention. A little time in the corporate salt mines had clearly taught her some manners. Sean, Megan said, I saw your TikToks. You're doing great. Congratulations. She was wearing overalls and a tank top, her hair in 2 braids. She was a bigger girl, but her skin was fair, and she'd learned how to dress for her figure. She was also wearing makeup, lipstick, mascara, perfectly shaped eyebrows. The internship had clearly taught her a few things. She had the look of a sweet, open, plus-size girl. If Leo didn't know better, he might have been fooled. Sean had never believed Megan was playing him, but the rest of the dorm was convinced. But a simp will simp. For a moment, Sean almost reverted to his old ways, his tail practically wagging. Oh no, it's not really me, he stammered. It's mostly Leo's thing. I just run the account. No way, Megan argued. You started that account. I remember you posted a video of me once. Yeah, but no one watched back then, so I deleted everything. It only took off after I started posting videos of Leo. So it's really his account now. Megan looked at him like he was an idiot. Before she could say more, Jordan cut in smoothly. Megan, long time no see. You look great. What foundation are you using? It's flawless. Alex arrived on time and saw the exchange. He pulled Sean aside. Bro, you can't have a girl who tries to turn you against your friends. A happy home is a peaceful home. Sean's face flushed. What are you talking about? She's not my girlfriend. I'm over her now. If she knew you were saying that, she'd be hurt. Alex threw his hands up. Fine. My mistake. Leo, the other party in this drama, was too busy being nervous to care. How was he supposed to act around a teacher whose favorability toward him was at 80? He felt fine about Professor Reed, but Ms. Miller, that felt different. Weird. He was a normal college student. Getting the system hadn't turned him into an arrogant megalomaniac. But he was still human. He'd had his moments of smugness. And when he first realized that his teachers were also potential targets for the system, his mind had definitely wandered into strange territory, especially after he'd used the Art of the Spiel buff on her. That buff was dangerous. It made you say things you had to live up to, and he really couldn't live up to that. The students were all catching up, the room buzzing with conversation, when a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The classroom door opened. Standing, there was a beautiful woman in a crisp white blouse, a black pencil skirt, and elegant beige heels. Her hair was down, and she wore subtle makeup. Whoa, Ms. Miller! A chorus of wolf whistles and cheers erupted. She looked incredible. Even Leo couldn't help but stare. The system's 80-point appearance rating was spot on. With just a little effort, she was a knockout. Before, she'd always seemed pretty but plain a bit tired. Tonight, her hair was freshly cut, framing her face in soft waves. She looked radiant, like she'd stepped back in time. Ms. Miller, you look amazing, someone shouted. Laura Miller smiled, a genuine, toothy grin. She walked to the front of the room, and the students quieted down, finding their seats. The girls, as usual, sat in the front rows. Leo and Jordan, being on the shorter side, sat in the second row, with Sean and Alex behind them. From his seat, Leo had a clear view of her. He felt like every time he looked up, she was looking back at him. All right, everyone. She began, her voice crisp and clear. I have 3 things to discuss tonight. First, fall break is coming up. Please be safe. I need everyone to sign out with the class president and provide your travel details and contact information. Second, regarding internships. She was efficient, covering the necessary points about paperwork and safety protocols. And finally, she said, her smile softening, I have to say goodbye to you all. I always thought I would be the one sending you off into the world, but due to a change in my job responsibilities, I have to leave you first. A wave of groans and protests filled the room. No, where are you going? Why? They were seniors, and Ms. Miller was a genuinely good advisor. She could be strict, but she always had their backs. As she spoke, Leo felt her gaze land on him. He mentally kicked himself. He was being ridiculous. There was no way she was changing jobs because of him. To avoid him? That was insane. You'll have a new advisor after the break, she continued, her smile unwavering. She's excellent, very experienced, and she'll be a great resource for you. We want you, someone called out. Don't worry, she said. I'll still be on campus, just in a different department. You can always come find me. I'm so grateful for the years we've had together. You were my first class of advisees. You've all been a huge part of my life, and I want to thank you for that. Senior year was all about goodbyes, but they didn't expect the first one to be their teacher. A few of the girls went up to hug her. She embraced each of them warmly. There were only about 17 students there tonight, but she hugged every single one. When it was Leo's turn, he stepped forward into a cloud of gardenia-scented perfume. Ms. Miller held him for a moment, her voice a soft whisper in his ear. Keep going, Leo. After the meeting, Laura Miller left the academic building and walked toward the administration hall. At the president's office, she knocked. Come in. The university president was also a woman, with short, practical hair and a formidable presence that had started to soften around the middle. Seeing Laura, she gestured toward the couch. Have a seat. I'll be with you in a moment. Laura sat down meekly on the leather sofa and said quietly, Aunt Julia. President Grant finished reading the document in her hand before rising. She sat in the center of the couch, picked up a glass from the coffee table, filled it to the brim with water from a pitcher, and downed it in one go. She sat with her legs apart in a power stance, though thankfully she was wearing slacks. In front of her students, Laura was a composed, respected instructor. In front of her aunt, she was a timid quail. It was just a natural food chain. When you decided to marry him, none of us approved, her aunt began, her voice firm. We all told you no, but you were just so love-struck. You had to have him. You stormed off, determined to prove us all wrong about your taste in men. And yes, he's made some money now, built a career for himself. But it turns out he's the kind of man who can endure hardship, but can't share success. At the end of the day, that's just a fundamental character flaw. Andy, please don't. I know I was wrong. Your parents asked me to look out for you. I'm usually too busy to do much, and you've always been stubborn, the kind of person who has to crash into a brick wall before turning around. Well, you've taken a major hit this time, but it's okay. We're still young. Just think of it as gaining a son for free. Seeing you dressed up tonight, looking sharp, that's good. From now on, focus on your career. Okay, Aunt Julia, I will. Your parents are worried sick. Call them more often. Don't hold a grudge. There's no such thing as an overnight feud between parents and children. You're a mother yourself now. Try to see it from their perspective. I know, Annie, Laura said, her cheeks puffed out, dutifully accepting the lecture. It didn't matter how old you were. In the eyes of your elders, you were always a child. Her own son was in elementary school, and she was still getting scolded. Smack. Her aunt gave her a light swat on the arm. Chin up. This divorce is a good thing. A rebirth. From here on out, it's a wide-open road, full of possibilities. Be your own person first. Everything else comes second. President Grant patted her niece's hand, a mix of frustration and helplessness in her eyes. You were such a sweet kid. How did you get so foolishly romantic over one man? See the mess it's made? I don't have children of my own, Laura. I've always thought of you as my daughter, and it drives me crazy to see you not fighting for yourself. She continued, so, you don't want to be a student advisor anymore. A change of scenery might be good. At a university, there are two paths. One is the academic track, publish or perish. It's pure meritocracy. If you're brilliant enough, even the president has to treat you with respect. But the grind, you have to be tough and sharp. And I'm not entirely confident in your head for that. The other path is administration. That's a steady climb, rung by rung. You're level-headed and detail-oriented, which are advantages. What do you think? Want to give the admin side a try? Okay, I'll do whatever you think is best. Good? You spent the last 3 years settling in. It's time. I'll arrange it for you, her aunt said, patting her hand again. And don't rush into finding someone new. Don't leap from one bad marriage into another hasty one. Focus on your work. I will, Annie. I'm not thinking about remarrying. I just want to live my life with Cody. The two of us are fine. All right, as long as you've thought it through. Now go on, do good work. Okay, Annie, I'm heading out. You get some rest. Laura, the obedient quail Miller, said her goodbyes and walked out of the administration building. Staring up at the star-filled sky, she took a deep breath. A wave of guilt washed over her. She was pretty sure she was still a hopeless romantic. The condition didn't disappear. It just transferred from one person to another. And this time, it had landed on someone absolutely, unequivocally off-limits. Her family had vehemently opposed Dave. This new person would have them all assembling with pitchforks. Having made this mistake once, Laura Miller was now an expert in concealment. She was keeping this one quiet, a secret from the entire world. The night was dark, the path long and lined with dense trees, occasionally broken by the glow of a lamppost where moths danced in the light. After the meeting, the guys from the dorm decided to hit the campus convenience store to stock up for the upcoming trip to Sean's place. It was a dozen-plus hours on a bus, a seriously long haul. Leo couldn't even remember the last time he'd been on a Greyhound. Alex was surprisingly excited. His dad had given him an assignment: write a report on his experiences after the trip. Besides, the idea of a road trip with a bunch of guys seemed like fun. Snacks, maybe some beer? No, drinking on the road was a bad idea. None of them could hold their liquor anyway, except maybe Sean. Sean had told them stories about the folk remedies from his hometown. Things made from local salamanders, strange herbal teas, homemade medicinal liquors steeped with bizarre plants and animals. He said when kids got sick, they were given a big swig, which usually knocked them out cold. Or maybe just got them drunk. Because medical care was scarce, they developed their own pharmacopoeia. Some of it worked. Some of it was questionable. Inside the store, Jordan grabbed bags of sunflower seeds, potato chips, and bread. Leo picked out a pack of beef jerky. At the front counter, Alex selected a carton of American Spirit cigarettes. He didn't smoke, so they were probably for greasing the wheels with people on the road. A pack of smokes was a great icebreaker or a thank you gift if you needed a hand. A single pack was almost $10, but a carton was cheaper. It was the kind of forward-thinking Leo and the others never would have considered. It was a difference in mindset, in experience, that no amount of intelligence points could bridge. Sean grabbed a loaf of bread and a bag of gummy candies. He paid for the group snacks. Since they were going to his place, everyone had already transferred him $100 for tickets and travel expenses. He was keeping a running tab. Alex insisted on paying for the cigarettes himself. On the way back to the dorm, Sean's phone buzzed. It was Megan. "Sean, come out. I'll treat you to a late-night snack." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of excitement warring with a pang of regret. Sorry, Megan, I can't. I have to edit some videos." He meant it. In 4 years, Megan had almost never been this direct. This was the first time she'd ever offered to treat him. She'd bought him a soda before, but only as a reward after he'd done a bunch of work for her, and even that had made him ecstatic. But this time, Sean Riley said no. There was no future in it, and he didn't want to get dragged in. He wasn't in her league. He just wanted to focus on what was right in front of him. Building a TikTok channel was a long game. It required consistency day in and day out. Hard work didn't guarantee success, but not working hard guaranteed failure. After turning her down, Sean's steps felt lighter. It was like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Women would only slow him down. Without that distraction, the sky was the limit. The wise man avoids the river of love. Look at Alex. If it weren't for his weakness for sophomore girls, the guy would be an unstoppable force, a fortress with no vulnerabilities. Look at Jordan, happy as a clam playing video games all day. Look at Leo. Leo Foster. "Package for Leo Foster," the RA at the front desk of the dorm called out. "Here, that's me." Leo hoisted a massive box and carried it back to the room. From the weight alone, he knew it wasn't the electric razor he'd been waiting for. Had that thing gotten lost in the mail? He tore open the package. Inside was a pair of professional hiking boots. He remembered Stella asking for his shoe size a while back, a US 10. There was also a full Canada Goose setup, a shell jacket, a vest, athletic pants, the boots, a hat. The whole ensemble. His roommate's eyes went wide with envy. Jordan was the first to grab him. "What the hell, man? What did you do to deserve this?" Alex looked like he wanted to join in. "Seriously, what's your secret?" Sean just shook his head, a look of pure admiration on his face. This was exactly the kind of guy who would be wildly popular with the lonely widows back in his village. While Jordan and Leo were wrestling, Sean snuck in a quick pinch. He couldn't help it. The envy was real. Tonight, he'd cut ties with his 4-year crush. And here was Leo, rubbing this in their faces. Jordan, despite his size, was out of shape from all the gaming and was no match for Leo. He was easily pinned, howling dramatically. Canada Goose. A full set. That's gotta be like $2,000 easy." "Leo, ask your rich girlfriend if she needs a goon. I'm tough. I can do anything." Alex opened the carton of American Spirits, took out a cigarette, and held it under his nose without lighting it. He sighed wistfully. I wanted a really rich girl who was into me." Sean's curiosity was piqued. "You never told us. What happened?" "She said her brother had a hookup for cheap booze and cigarettes," Alex said with a wry smile, "and asked me to help her get a liquor license." The girl had figured out the correct way to use Alex Young. Sean, Jordan, and Leo were speechless. Legendary. Lying in bed, Leo texted Stella, both of them in that phase where they just stared at their phones, grinning like idiots. "Leo, the clothes fit. Stella, they're perfect." "Leo, and the shoes. Stella, really good." They even make me look taller. Dog-faced Stella. LMAO rabbit-faced Stella. You leave on the 30th, right? I have to leave on the 29th. Victoria Vance is probably coming to get me. Rabbit-faced pensive face, so I guess I don't have to see you off. I hate goodbyes. For some reason, just hearing Stella talk about her mom sent a shiver of dread down Leo's spine. Victoria Vance sounded way scarier than his own mom. His mom had a temper, sure, but she could be reasoned with. Victoria sounded like an immovable force of nature. Leo, we can hang out tomorrow then. Stelly, let's go for our run in the morning and get dinner together tomorrow night. Handshake, they texted until they said goodnight, but even then, he kept checking his phone, hoping for one more message. He glanced at the clock. It was like a magic trick. He felt like he'd only picked up his phone for a few minutes, but a whole hour had vanished. He was totally hooked. He noticed several unread messages in his chat list. He'd been holding his phone the whole time, waiting for a reply from Stella, and had ignored everyone else. There was a payment notification from Paige Kennedy for Walking Moose. She'd also asked where he was going for fall break. Seeing he hadn't replied, she sent another message a few minutes later. Paige, in VM, I asked Sean. He said you guys are going to his hometown for the break. Ha ha. Leo, what are you so happy about? She really was a happy-go-lucky airhead. Leo accepted the payment and sent her a tiger emoji. When Paige heard that Leo was going to Sean's hometown, she'd had a brilliant idea. She had an aunt who lived near there. Her uncle was the director of the local holistic medical center. She could totally go visit for the break. She and her cousin used to be super close. She would surprise the hell out of Leo. What she didn't realize was that in that part of the country, near could mean hours away, and the drive from the city into the hollows was a long one. The silly girl thought it was like Bridgeport, where you were never more than 15 minutes from civilization. Fired up, Paige immediately started picking out dresses. She was going to pack a whole suitcase full. Wait, it was probably cooler there. She'd need cute, warm clothes, not just dresses. She scrambled around her dorm room, a panda face sheet mask on, excitedly pulling outfits from her closet. The lights-out time at the Honors College dorms was later than the main campus. Her roommates chattered around her, offering fashion advice. Paige was always generous and had a refreshingly blunt, cheerful personality. Her friends were cut from the same cloth, and they all got along great. In Stella's dorm room, Jessica Monroe, who had been curled up like a cooked shrimp in pain that afternoon, was now sipping hot water and meticulously writing in a planner. Her stomach still ached, and she pressed a hand against it from time to time, but her focus was absolute. She was making a plan for fall break. Since she wasn't going home, the long break was a perfect opportunity to get things done. The foreign family she tutored for was going on vacation, so she had the time. She'd already picked up a gig as a tour guide. She'd gotten her license a while back precisely for this reason, to cash in on holiday rushes. With her fluent English, she could land high-end tours that paid well. Truthfully, she hadn't wanted to go home anyway, but having her dad explicitly tell her not to come back, it felt like she didn't have a home anymore. She had worked so hard, had never given up on him, yet he always, laughably, gave up on her. Her dad was still handsome, even at his age, always well-groomed and clean-shaven. He just didn't work. He was an idle layabout. A few women had taken an interest in him over the years, but his laziness and gambling addiction always scared them away. Who knew how long this new one would last? Jessica had been shaken by the tarot card reading earlier that day. She decided that as soon as she paid off this last bit of debt, she was going to cancel her credit card. She used to care so much about appearances, terrified her dad would show up at school and cause a scene. But now, the man was a classic bully. All bark at home, no bite in public. He'd been spoiled rotten by his mother his whole life, the baby of the family, and was an expert at getting his way through whining and feigning illness. The second things didn't go his way, he collapsed on the floor, clutching his chest, moaning that he couldn't go on. He was a master manipulator, but only with his own family. He was too cowardly to try it on anyone else. Thinking of her father brought tears to her eyes again. She ducked her head and kept writing. She didn't care anymore. If he really did come to the school and ruin her reputation, so be it. She was a senior, about to graduate. She wasn't applying to grad school, wasn't on the fast track for anything. If her fate was already sealed, if her life was already this bad, what more could happen? She had to follow her heart. She had to live for herself, happily, freely, without holding back. No more compromises, no more caring what other people thought. She had to live. After finishing her plan, the dorm lights went out. She filled a glass bottle with hot water from a kettle, drew the curtain around her bed, and lay down. The bottle was a bit too hot against her stomach, so she wrapped it in an old t-shirt. The gentle pressure was comforting. Habitually, she opened TikTok. The first video on her feed was from the Roommate Chronicles. It showed one of the guys patiently teaching an old woman how to play tennis. His form was perfect, his expression clean and earnest. She couldn't help but tap on the account's profile and scroll through the older videos. Most of them were just slices of daily life, studying in a classroom, going for a run, playing with a dog, reading in the library. The videos were so wholesome and beautiful, it was hard to believe they were filmed at the same school she attended. She watched for a long time, until the memory of him in the swimming pool, looking so flustered and clumsy, surfaced in her mind. Jessica shut her phone off. She could hear Stella moving around, and knew she was probably texting Leo. Stella was so lucky. She had found happiness, and now she was free to embrace even more of it. But Jessica was unhappy, and she carried her misfortune with her everywhere. She shied away from happiness, terrified her bad luck would be contagious, terrified of being scorned and looked down upon. She finally fell asleep to the sound of that song in her head, the one from the karaoke night. The ice-cold water, your sworn enemy, the reckless fire of the strongest drink. Through all the hardest days, you've conquered it all. Here's a little red flower for you, to cover the new scar you gained today. She dreamed. She was back at the fire mic. She was deep in conversation with Alex Young, her eyes fixed only on him. To her, men were divided into two categories, useful and useless. But as they talked, a song began. The boy in the corner started to sing. She froze. For the rest of the conversation, her mind was elsewhere, the melody replaying in her head. Suddenly, she didn't want to talk anymore. In her dream, she listened to him sing all night. In her dream, he was singing just for her. The next morning, the water in the bottle she was clutching was cold. Blood had soaked through to her shorts and the bed sheets. Early the next day, Leo woke up with a dry mouth. He felt like he'd been dreaming, singing all night. Or maybe not. Either way, he was incredibly thirsty. He stumbled out of bed and chugged a glass of lukewarm water, then mixed some honey into another. After his morning constitutional, he noticed that the honey water seemed to be working wonders for his system. His skin was clearing up too. Maybe his teenage years were finally over, and with them, teenage acne. He got ready and headed out for his run. The sky was clear and bright. Last night's brilliant sunset had promised a beautiful day. As he left the dorm complex, he saw Professor Reed and jogged over to join her for her warm-up stretches, striking up a conversation. You need to keep exercising. You look much more energetic these days, Professor Reed said with a smile. The photos Leo had taken of her yesterday had been a huge hit with her friends. She was committed to aging naturally, rejecting her friends' suggestions of cosmetic procedures. She didn't want to look like some stretched-out monster. This was better. Yeah, I feel like my appetite's even gotten bigger, he said. Oh, by the way, my friend's flight should be arriving around noon tomorrow. I'll need you and Walt to go pick her up. Of course, Professor. Just send me the flight details. I'll make sure we're there on time. Leo realized that Stella's mom, Victoria, was also supposed to arrive around noon. Perfect. They would just miss each other. He was definitely not ready for the parent meeting stage. It was terrifying. He chatted with Professor Reed for a few more minutes, then asked about her friend's preferences, wondering if there was anything he should prepare. Professor Reed, still in a great mood from her morning exercise, happily listed off a few details. Leo committed them to memory, then said his goodbyes. Professor Reed waved, watching the young man run off. That kid is learning fast, she thought. He used to be too shy to even speak to me, and now he's so considerate, asking about the preferences of the person he's picking up. He's got something to him. Dr. Genevieve Croft, Ph.D. from Yale School of Art, a rising star in the art world. Her research focused on the intersection of national aesthetics and global art. Her piece Cold Stone was selected for the prestigious Jean-Luc Prize in Paris. A mountain path was featured in the London Young Sculptors and Environmental Art exhibition. Her work Golden Sunshine Rice won a National First Prize Award for Young Artists. Her sculpture Green Shoots sold at a Sotheby's auction in New York for over $500,000, bought by a wealthy businesswoman. Another piece, The Scent of Tuna Flowers in Memory, sold for just under $300,000, also to a private collector. In short, she was a not-so-young artist who was not short on cash. She and Professor Reed were unlikely friends, with a large age gap between them, but they were as close as sisters, bonded over art and tea. Dr. Croft had recently had surgery on her eyes and was coming to Bridgeport for a while to rest and recuperate. Professor Reed had recommended a naturopathic doctor for her. Leo had heard rumors about a renowned holistic doctor hidden away in the small, unincorporated village on campus grounds. People supposedly came from all over to see him. Leo was skeptical. He was young and healthy, Even swallowing a pill was an ordeal. The thought of choking down bowl after bowl of bitter herbal medicine was unbearable. But Professor Reed was a picture of health and had recommended the doctor to many of her friends. After seeing the recent photos of her, several of them were now eager to visit, marveling at how vibrant and radiant she looked. This place, they said, must be incredibly rejuvenating. Most of Professor Reed's friends were her peers, titans in their respective fields. They were at an age where the relentless pursuit of academic accolades was losing its appeal. They were more interested in wellness, hoping to live out their days comfortably free from illness. Leo memorized a few key facts about Dr. Croft from her Wikipedia page, planning to ask Alex later if there were any social protocols he should be aware of. He reached a fountain in the main square. It was running today, which usually meant there was an event or an important visitor on campus. Stella was there, dressed in simple black athletic pants and a white t-shirt. It was a standard outfit, but on her tall frame, it was striking. The moment Leo saw her, he was hit with an overwhelming urge to kiss her, to hold her, to press his lips to her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, her chin, her ears, her hair, her mouth. She was warming up with her earbuds in, completely absorbed, exuding an aura of cool indifference. She was devastatingly beautiful. When she finally spotted him, a smile broke across her face. She even took a few quick running steps toward him before catching herself and stopping, all prim and proper. A random student NPC happened to be walking past at that exact moment. Leo shot a glare at the emotionless NPC. Of all the times to pass by, it had to be now. Stella had been a split second away from running into his arms. The only thing holding their relationship back was Stella's self-control. They fell into a comfortable pace, running side by side. The morning air was cool and fresh after yesterday's rain. That big golden retriever is so well-behaved. Do you walk him every day? Stella asked, finally working up the courage to bring up the subject of dogs. She never wanted to tell anyone the story of how Victoria had given away her childhood dog, which had ended up being eaten. The memory was a permanent scar, a part of her now, but she wanted to be open to a new dog. She didn't want to run away from it anymore. Yeah, pretty much whenever I have time, Leo said. It started as a side gig, but now I've really gotten attached to Moose. He's so smart and good-natured. I kind of don't want to let him go. I wonder what the penalty is for dog-napping a dog you're being paid to walk. Hey, Stella slapped his arm, a little harder than she intended. Don't even joke about that. His owner would be heartbroken. But I'm thinking of quitting, Leo admitted, turning serious. His owner is a sophomore at the honors college, and she's a little... He made a loopy gesture in the air. I don't get it. Her brain just works differently. And now that I'm with you, it feels weird to keep walking her dog. But I'd really miss Moose. Stella smiled. A girl who loves dogs can't be all that bad. And we don't have to be one of those couples that just sticks to each other all the time. We can have our own interests, move forward together, and appreciate the scenery along the way. But we don't have to give up our friends and family to do it. She wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. The future terrified her. If she really did go abroad for her studies, what would happen to Leo? She had already changed his life. If she selfishly made him accustomed to a life that revolved only around her, what would happen if she left? She had a soft heart. Her world was clean and happy. She had never intentionally hurt anyone, and the last thing she wanted was to hurt someone she liked. They continued running until they reached the edge of the campus cemetery. The groundskeeper, who is usually there sweeping, was absent today. They exchanged a shy glance and, without a word, headed up the hill together. A love-struck brain is immune to logic. Zombies wouldn't even eat it. A love-struck brain thinks a morning stroll through a cemetery is perfectly normal. This time, they didn't go straight to the gazebo. Stella wanted to explore the cemetery itself. Hand in hand, they stepped over the low, unlocked gate at the entrance. Most of the plots were for couples, with 2 photo slots on a single headstone. Some had only 1 photo, with the other slot empty, meaning one person was still alive. It seemed like most of the occupied slots belonged to old men. Grandmas, it seemed, lived longer. If we end up together, Leo said, we could get one of these. I'll go first, warm up the spot for you. We can queue up for the next life together. Stella smacked his arm again, this time adding a pinch for good measure. Shush, don't say things like that. It was early, and dew still clung to the pine needles. They walked up the path, drawn inexplicably toward the summit. They had done more new things in the first few weeks of their senior year than the previous 3 years combined. At the top of the cemetery was a large, beautiful monument. While the other plots were like 1-bedroom apartments, this one was a 3-bedroom suite. It was spacious, surrounded by a ring of newly planted trees. Both photo slots on the headstone were empty. Rumor had it that the dean of the honors college had reserved it for himself and his wife. Some people lived their whole lives without owning a home, while others had their final resting places fully furnished before they were even gone. The view from the top was incredible. You could see the lake and hear the chaotic but strangely peaceful sounds of instruments from the nearby music building. Once the small trees grew in, it would be a shady, cool spot. Leo didn't know anything about feng shui, but in that moment, he felt the wind was just right, the water was just right. The distant lake shimmered, and a gentle breeze kept them cool. They sat for a while in front of the new monument, then leisurely made their way back down. The spirits of a cemetery. What in the world? 2 living people sitting on our doorstep first thing in the morning. They left the cemetery, but didn't go to the gazebo to cuddle because someone had beaten them to it. A couple was already sitting there. When they saw Leo and Stella coming down from the cemetery, they both jumped. The guy's face went pale. 2 people in matching white shirts and black pants, emerging hand in hand from a cemetery at dawn, with a misty fog drifting around them. Ghosts. Smack. Rick, are you even listening to me? I asked where we should go for fall break. What are you staring at? Whatever you want, the guy stammered, his daze broken. Anywhere you want to go is fine with me. When he looked back, the path was empty. The couple in white was gone, leaving only the swirling mist. He was scared limp. Leo and Stella, seeing the couple in the gazebo, the girl sitting intimately on the guy's lap, had felt a little awkward. The guy could see them, but the girl's back was to them. They quickly clasped hands and hurried away. Once they were back on the main path by the lake, they burst out laughing. They had totally freaked that guy out. When you're in love, being affectionate is great, but pulling a little prank together is just as fun. On the way back, they stopped at the hot dog stand owned by the guy who, according to campus legend, secretly owned a condo in Miami Beach. Leo bought hot dogs for his roommates, too. Thinking they'd had a long night, he added an extra corn dog for each of them. Even if they weren't in love, they still needed to replenish their strength. System. Host's run was not entirely focused, but he experienced joy. Reward. 1 scar removal. Leo sighed. He felt like all his scars were almost gone by now. Every daily task seemed to reward him with scar removal. Even old mosquito bite scars he'd scratched open as a kid were vanishing. Did I really have 233 scars? He wondered. Doesn't seem like that many. Though it was a reward, he sensed a hint of disapproval from the system. Maybe its last job was for a hyper-disciplined overachiever, and it was still adjusting to the whole trophy husband gig. Leo jogged back to the dorm, balancing 3 hot dogs wrapped in paper. He'd walked slowly with Stella on the way back, but now he had to hurry. The fried onions on the hot dogs would lose their crunch if he took too long, and that was the best part. Back in the room, Sean was already awake. Jordan was still asleep. Alex was lying in bed, scrolling on his phone. Leo passed out the food, along with a bottle of the organic protein milk a professor had given him. He didn't want to go bad over the break. He had everyone pay him for the base price of the hot dogs. He didn't charge for the extra corn dogs. In that way, Leo was a bit like his dad. He didn't mind taking a small loss to let others feel like they got a deal. It wasn't much, but over time, it made people see you as generous and reliable. Not that Leo thought about it that deeply. It was just how he was raised. Sean, however, noticed. He knew the corn dog was extra, but felt it would be awkward to quibble over $1 with Leo, so he just made a mental note of the kindness. Jordan, on the other hand, was oblivious. As the pampered son of a factory owner, he was used to things being given to him, and he was just as generous with his roommates, so he never felt like he was taking advantage. Alex noticed, but he wasn't the type to be bought with small favors. A single piece of advice from him could be worth a year's worth of hot dogs. It was strange, though. Psychologically, Sean felt more gratitude toward Leo for a corn dog than he did toward Alex for the scholarship. People really do stick to their own kind. After breakfast, the roommates saw Leo head out to study again. Does love make you a better student? Or does being a better student make you find love? Sean ignored him and went back to his own work. His video stats had plateaued recently. Views were down, though his subscriber count was holding steady. To succeed on TikTok, you needed to post consistently and create compelling content, which was a tough balance to strike. Just posting daily already put him ahead of 80% of creators. If he could maintain quality, he'd beat 90%. But you couldn't have a Northwood Idol finale every day. That kind of atmosphere was lightning in a bottle. Sean wasn't good at scripting skits, and he felt like Leo would be awkward and unnatural if he tried to act. Their channel had taken off because it felt real. If they started chasing clout with staged videos, they'd lose their edge. Authenticity was their selling point. So, Sean was still editing footage of Leo's daily life. Today, after getting permission from Dr. Sterling and Professor Reed, He was planning to post a video of Leo learning how to perform a tea ceremony. Alex finished his breakfast, cleaned up, and vanished, off on one of his mysterious errands. Jordan was busy with his own errand, playing video games. Sean had heard Jordan's parents were offering to pay $10,000 for him to go to a fat camp. Sean thought his village could do it for cheaper. Just send Jordan home with him for a month. He'd probably lose 20 pounds easy. No charge, just cover food costs, which would be less than $1,000 a month. No video games, but he could swat mosquitoes, cut grass, and catch grasshoppers and scorpions. Leo arrived at his usual study classroom in the library. The familiar NPCs were there, sitting far apart, each in their own world. Leo gave a silent nod and sat down. Today, he wasn't studying English. His daily conversations with Dr. Novak had caused his conversational skills to skyrocket, and vocabulary words suddenly just clicked without rote memorization. The study progress bar the system had given him was for economics. It sounded impressive, but he had no idea how he'd ever use it. Still, he figured filling the warehouse of his brain with something couldn't hurt. Leo, the system's NPC, opened a brand new economics textbook. A lot of the classes for his major overlapped with business administration. He used to think this stuff was mind-numbingly boring, completely detached from real life. But now, maybe because of the intelligence boost, he found himself slowly getting drawn in. It was still all theory, but he could see how so many real-world market behaviors were extensions of these basic principles. The textbook read like a list of formulas, which was dry. But when he connected it to real problems, it became a fascinating puzzle. When he took a break, stretching and looking out the window at the birds, the grad school, hopeful NPC, Colin Edwards, walked over with his book. "Hey man, you're like a genius. Can I ask you an economics question? What do you think about oceanic freight dynamics?" Leo froze. How would I know? Why is he asking me? Why is he calling me a genius? He felt a sudden jolt of nervousness. Maybe he'd been hanging around too many actual geniuses lately, and some of it had rubbed off. Does economics have anything to do with this? Economics is the social science that studies the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, Leo began, calmly bullshitting. And I think it's not looking good. He couldn't explain why it wasn't looking good, but he knew if he could throw in some jargon, he'd sound convincing. He tried to recall what he'd just read and started spewing nonsense. Given the current economic environment and the domestic and international situation, the overall trend for maritime shipping logistics is not optimistic. Leo channeled Alex's speaking style, affecting a certain deliberate cadence. He used phrases like not optimistic instead of just bad. He padded his sentences with fluff before getting to the point, making it sound professional when it was really just hot air. It wouldn't have fooled a real expert, but Colin Edwards, for whatever reason, was looking at him with a filter of pure admiration. He nodded intently, completely absorbed. Then he walked back to his seat, pulled out his phone, and started furiously tapping. Leo's stomach dropped. Oh God, don't tell me he's trading stocks based on my analysis. Is he selling? I'm not responsible for this. He felt a prickle of guilt. Thankfully, the other study NPC, the one with the round glasses whose boyfriend had cheated on her, but was still trying to get into the same grad school as him, didn't approach him. If she had, Leo would have been tempted to give her a lecture on self-respect. He was suddenly curious about stocks. They had used simulator accounts in one of his classes, but he'd never touched them in real life. He hadn't paid attention in that class and had ended up buying high and selling low, a complete disaster. If he wanted to get into it for real, what was the first step? Probably a TikTok search for how to open a brokerage account. Leo decided to finish his studying first. After that, during his half-hour yogurt break, he'd look into it. He pushed the thought aside, settled his mind, and went back to the book. When the progress bar vanished, his head felt full, like knowledge had actually been physically downloaded into his brain. It was a heavy, dizzying sensation. The new information felt incompatible, like it was still trying to find a place to settle. Still, setting up a stock account sounded interesting. He currently had a few $1,000s to his name. It had been over 10 before he'd sent Sean money for the trip. He pulled out his old phone and started recording the process of setting up an account. The TikTok tutorials told him to download an app. He chose Robinhood, and he could open an account right there, no need to go to a bank. It was free to open, but he had to link a bank account. He followed the steps, selected his bank, and just like that, he was a person with a brokerage account. He didn't deposit any money yet. Instead, he looked up the company Colin had mentioned, Oceanic Freight Dynamics. He checked the ticker. The price was dropping like a stone, $8, $05, $8, $04, $7, 75. It wasn't a dip, it was a waterfall. Just as Leo was about to leave, Colin came over, phone in hand. Dude, can I get your number? Leo blinked. The line sounded awfully familiar. Not too long ago, he'd been the one using it. Leo sent the video of him opening a brokerage account to Sean. A reply came back almost instantly. Sean, Leo, whatever you do, don't start day trading. Our professor said if you just manage not to lose money, you're already beating 98% of people. We're not the other 2%. Sean, are you feeling pressured because you're dating Stella? You can't rush things. Sean, don't think you can just hit the jackpot in the stock market. For most normal people, it's just gambling. Sean, the TikTok channel will start making money eventually. It's not much now, but think long term. Sean. Watching the messages pile up from his concerned dorm mom, Leo quickly replied, a guy in my study group asked me about a stock, so I just wanted to see what the process was like. We learned about it in class, but I've never actually done it. Everyone talks about it, even grandmas trade stocks, and here we are studying it and don't even know how to open an account. I just followed a TikTok tutorial. I thought the process was interesting, so I recorded it for you. Okay, Sean replied, just as long as you're not getting any crazy ideas about getting rich quick. Leo thought, even if I were, I'd follow the rule of thirds. Never invest more than a third of your money. So if you lose it all, you can still survive. Sean wrote back. Fine. He figured there was no point in nagging. They lived together. If Leo was really going off the deep end, he'd know. Pushing too hard would just make him rebellious. If it had been Jordan or Alex wanting to trade stocks, Sean wouldn't have said a word. Leo appreciated the concern. With a friendship score of 85, he knew Sean had his back. He headed to the library. Having opened an account and studied economics for what felt like 4 hours, he was intrigued. He found a biography of Warren Buffett and sat down to read. Just being in the library once a day calmed his mind. It felt like all the knowledge in the world was his for the taking. Sure, you could find most of this on your phone, but when he held his phone, time had a way of inexplicably disappearing. Social media, games, watching other people's lives. It all just vanished in a blur of scrolling. If you want to take back control of your life, start with how you use each hour. The quote from an editor he followed resonated deeply with him. Ever since he had started planning his life by the hour, everything had slowly begun to change. For the next hour, he was going to take control by reading. He opened the book, Warren Buffett. In 1941, at age 11, Buffett bought his first stock. Right now, at 21, Leo had just opened his first brokerage account, but hadn't bought anything. In 1943, at 13, Buffett was a paperboy, earning a monthly income comparable to a white-collar worker at the time. At 13, Leo was in 8th grade, getting a $20 weekly allowance that he spent on comic books and soda. In 1945, at 15, Buffett used $1,200, about what Leo had in cash right now, to buy a 40-acre farm and partnered with a friend to lease pinball machines to local barbershops. At 15, Leo was a freshman in high school, living in a dorm and only allowed out on weekends, no cell phone allowed. By the time he was 21, a senior in college, Buffett had already amassed his first fortune through his own small businesses. At 21, Leo was a senior in college. Leo read about Buffett's incredible foresight, his principles, his famous quotes. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. After finishing the chapter, Leo felt neither greedy nor fearful. He was playing in a completely different league. Buffett bought McDonald's stock. Leo could only afford a burger and fries from McDonald's. Though, in a way, they were both buying McDonald's. He decided he would buy one stock just to see what it was like. Even if he lost the money, it wasn't that much. It was better than getting to middle age, suddenly deciding to risk it all on the market, and losing his life savings, setting his life to ultra-hard mode. Today was the 28th. The market closed for the holiday, starting October 1 SD. He closed the book and rubbed his sore eyes. He felt strangely tired but fulfilled. System. Host has read diligently, felt a sense of progress, and learned about a new field. Reward. Golden Touch Buff. 1 use. With the Golden Touch Buff, Host can select one reliable stock with favorable short-term growth potential. Friendly reminder. The most important part of stock trading is knowing when to exit. A complete exit strategy is what separates trading from being fleeced. Leo felt a jolt. This was the first time the system had given him such a direct, tangible reward related to a book. A literal golden touch. The market was seductive, especially when you felt certain you were going to win. For a moment, he felt an insane urge to go all in, to bet everything he had, even to borrow money to bet more. He suddenly understood the irrational mind of a compulsive gambler. I can win. I'm going to win. I'm going to be rich. This is my chance. Leo planned to try his luck. He was a student, after all, and one of a student's primary skills was asking for money. He called his dad first to test the waters. his mom controlled the purse strings. "Dad, can I borrow some money?" There was a long silence on the other end. "Is she pregnant?" his dad finally asked, his voice low and serious. "We don't raise scumbags, son. You have to be a man. You have to be responsible." "Dad," Leo cut him off. "Have some faith in your own parenting. An honest guy like you couldn't raise a kid that prolific. I haven't even, used the equipment yet." "Oh," his dad said, audibly relieved. "So what do you need?" "How about my private stash? Maybe 1,000, 1,500 tops. Is that enough?" His dad had mentioned before that since his Uncle Clay's success, he and his mom were doing okay with the restaurant. Leo decided to press his luck. "Dad, what are the chances I could get a little more from Mom?" "Don't you dare," his dad practically shouted. "If you ask your mother for that kind of money, she'll be on the next bus down there to find you." "Dad, did you ever see that movie, The Truman Show? Are you sure I'm not secretly rich? Like, maybe you and Mom are billionaires just pretending to run a small diner to teach me humility." 4,500, his dad roared, the sound like thunder. "That's it. Any more, and your mother and I are both coming down there." A moment later, Leo's phone buzzed with a series of transfers from his dad. One for $1,500, one for $1,000, another for $1,000, and a final $4,1,000. His dad had stashes everywhere. He probably still had a few $100 hidden away. Leo decided not to push it. Getting this much was an unexpected windfall. Next, his Uncle Clay. His uncle was sharper than his dad, harder to fool. But if his dad had that much hidden away, his uncle had to have more. Leo first decided on the stock. Since Colin had asked him about maritime shipping, he'd looked into it. The name Oceanic Freight Dynamics sounded promising. This was a total rookie move, based on nothing but a gut feeling, a whim. He knew it was a terrible idea. This was all in the system. He transferred the money from his dad, plus most of his own savings, into his Robinhood account, leaving himself with about $500 for living expenses. Before dating Stella, 100 would have been plenty. Now a few hundred felt like it could evaporate in a puff of smoke. He entered the ticker for Oceanic Freight Dynamics, confirmed the price, and bought $5,000 worth. Then he called his uncle. Clay picked up after a few rings. It was quiet on his end, with a slight echo, like a spy making a clandestine call. "What's up, Leo?" "Uncle Clay, do you invest in the stock market?" "Don't be ridiculous. I have a respectable job. I don't mess with that stuff. It's dangerous. A lot of people lose everything. You're young. Don't get sucked into it." "Okay, Uncle. Never mind then. Just want to say hi." Hey, don't get all formal with me, kid. What's on your mind? Spit it out." Leo, activating his newly awakened art of the spiel skill, began. "Well, I was having tea with Professor Reed yesterday in DR. Sterling, the former university president, and they were talking about the market. Professor Reed seems really bullish on Oceanic Freight Dynamics. She mentioned if I had an account, it might be worth picking some up. So I was just calling to see if you were into it." "Professor Reed trade stocks?" Clay asked, a hint of doubt in his voice. "And when did he start hanging out with Dr. Sterling?" "My nephew's social circle is getting intimidating. I don't know if she does personally. Maybe it's for someone she knows. But Uncle, this was a private conversation. I've only told you. You know that $1,000 you gave me? I haven't even told my dad. Please don't mention this to him. If you tell him, it's the same as telling my mom, and she'll interrogate me." Clay Foster frowned, thinking. He was a sharp guy. "Did you buy any?" he asked. "Yeah, I scraped together $5,000 and bought some. Professor Reed wouldn't steer me wrong, right?" Clay was impressed. "Damn, Leo, you've grown up. That's not a small amount for a student. If that rich girlfriend of his isn't ugly, he should definitely marry her. The market is risky, Leo. Don't get carried away. I'll send you 2,000. If you hear any more tips like this, you let your uncle know." Leo grinned. 2,000. Just like that. My uncle's private stash must be way bigger than Dad's. "Okay, thanks, Uncle," Leo said, hanging up before he pushed his luck any further. On the other end, Clay Foster quietly pulled out a second phone, opened his own Robinhood app, and began furiously tapping. Leo's phone buzzed with a notification. $2,000 received from Clay Foster. A text followed. "Study hard. Call your uncle more often." Leo, "Okay, thanks, Uncle." Leo transferred the $2,000 from his uncle into his Robinhood account and bought more shares of Oceanic Freight Dynamics. The market was a strange and powerful thing. In the few minutes since his first purchase, the price had already ticked up. What he'd bought at $8.01 was now trading at $8.08. After the second purchase, his portfolio value was already over $7,100. It was terrifying. His monthly allowance used to be just a few $100. Now, in the blink of an eye, he'd made over 100. No wonder people got hooked. His heart was pounding, and he felt a little lightheaded as he walked. It wasn't until he reached the foot of the hill by the cemetery that his mind finally calmed down. The stock market existed long before he opened his account. Plenty of the people buried in that cemetery were probably expert traders once, and now look at them. Before he'd left for college, his parents had given him one strict rule: no gambling. He remembered the owner of the fruit stand next to their restaurant. The guy's business was booming, but then he got addicted to day trading. He stopped caring about the store, letting the fruit spoil, constantly bragging to everyone about his latest stock pick. In the end, he lost everything: the stocks, the store, all of it. A new kid took over and started selling fruit smoothies. His mom liked them, but his dad always said the new owner wasn't as honest as the old one. A real shame. For ordinary people, getting rich overnight was a fantasy. His mind was still racing. He decided to go for a swim. When his brain was overloaded, exercising his body helped. On his way, he stopped by the campus bookstore and bought the first 3 volumes of Cosmic Drifters, his favorite comic series. Cody, Laura Miller's son, had messaged him yesterday. He'd solved the wooden puzzle box Leo had given him. His wish, he'd said, was for some comic books. Kids were so easy to please. All he wanted was a book. Leo remembered being that age, how getting a new book, a book he really wanted, felt like the greatest thing in the world. He planned to drop them off for Cody later that afternoon, hopefully avoiding an encounter with Miss Miller. He doubted he'd run into Jessica at the pool today. Stella had mentioned she was on her period. He still hadn't figured out Stella's cycle. He'd heard girls' hormones went wild during their period, making them moody or sad or other things. He just wanted to know what to expect with Stella, but she wouldn't tell him. At the pool, Leo struck up a conversation with a maintenance guy, a grizzled man he'd somehow never noticed before. "We change the water once a month," the man said proudly. "It's clean. We use the university's water, not like those public pools that just dump bleach in and never drain it." That was reassuring. "You do a great job," Leo said. "The place is spotless." "You bet," the man replied. "My cousin's company has the contract. We keep it right, but some of the fixtures are old. Let me give you a tip, kid. When you shower, use the one all the way at the end. Just replace the head on it. Great water pressure." Leo nodded, making a mental note. The maintenance guy was a talker. Leo finally had to excuse himself to go swim. He changed quickly and dove in. The university pool was much nicer than the one back home, which was always packed like a can of sardines in the summer. Here it was spacious and quiet. The initial shock of the cool water was invigorating. As he swam, his mind cleared. The obsessive urge to check his phone, to look at the stock price again and again, faded. He swam hard for a full hour, feeling refreshed and clear-headed. He headed for the showers and used the one the maintenance man had recommended. The water pressure was indeed fantastic. As the hot water streamed over him, the system's voice echoed in his mind. "Congratulations, host. You have passed the preliminary trophy husband test. You did not succumb to the desire for instant wealth. An excellent trophy husband is not easily swayed by temptation into abandoning his morals and becoming a gambler. Host has rationally controlled his desire for money and knows when to stop. Reward: beginner's tool, buff, detect losing investment, 30 days. Can be used once per day to identify one bad investment. Overuse is not permitted." Leo quickly rinsed off, grabbed his phone, and opened Robinhood. He randomly tapped through a dozen different stock pages, then activated the buff and glanced at them. A sea of red. Nearly all of them were projected to lose value. "Man, the stock market is terrifying," he thought. Left to my own devices, I would have thought any of those were a good bet. He closed the app, resolving not to look at it again. College life was so much simpler. Wait for your monthly allowance to drop, then coast. The real world was scary. You could lose everything just by playing on your phone. He opened his messages and saw one from Ms. Miller. "Come over for lunch. Cody knows you bought him the comics, and he's very excited." Leo felt the calm from his swim instantly evaporate. His scalp prickled. He typed and deleted a reply several times before finally sending. "Professor, I don't want to impose. I can just drop the comics off for Cody this afternoon." His phone immediately rang. It was her. He fumbled to answer it. "Professor, I told you to come over, so come over." "Don't argue," she said, her voice sharp. "The food is ready. You and Cody can eat. I have a meeting and won't be home." "Okay." The line went dead. Why is she so intimidating all of a sudden? Leo walked to the faculty housing complex. Mr. Roberts, the security guard, was engrossed in an old episode of The Americans on his small TV, just as Philip Jennings was leaving a tense meeting. He barely glanced up, just waved Leo through. Leo found Ms. Miller's apartment and knocked. The door opened, and Cody stood there, a fluffy golden retriever puppy, suddenly darting out from behind him. "Come back," Cody yelled, thinking the puppy was making a run for it. The little dog skidded to a halt when it saw Leo, then started sniffing and circling his ankles enthusiastically. "Leo, this is the new puppy my mom got me," Cody explained. "He's still getting used to the place. Can you eat lunch with me? My mom seems really busy lately. I think she changed jobs or something. And you brought my comics. And that puzzle box took me forever. And..." The boy was a chatterbox. The puppy continued to happily orbit Leo's legs. For a moment, it felt strangely warm and domestic. Leo felt a pang of guilt. He'd promised to play video games with Cody more often, but he'd completely forgotten about the kid. Young people shouldn't have kids, he thought. They're still kids themselves. He ate a hearty lunch with Cody. Ms. Miller was true to her word. She wasn't there, which made Leo feel much more relaxed. He did notice a few new things, though. 2 new pairs of very high, stiletto-heeled shoes by the door, one black, one cream. And on the balcony, a rack of new clothes, including a set of black lace lingerie. The underwear was very, very small. Other than that, everything was normal. Ms. Miller was an incredible cook. She made a beef stew where the meat was so tender it fell off the bone, and the carrots had soaked up all the savory flavor. The scrambled eggs with chives were amazing, with crispy edges and perfectly tender greens. The Kung Pao chicken had crunchy peanuts and juicy, perfectly cooked chicken with a hint of sweetness. Even the side dishes were delicious. Cody ate while reading his new comics, not really paying attention. For him, his mom's cooking was a given. He knew it was good, but it was just normal. For Leo, it was a rare treat. He felt like every meal here was one he had to earn, and he savored every bite. His appetite had grown, and he polished off everything. When they were done, Leo prepared to wash the dishes. He couldn't let Cody do it, and he couldn't just leave them in the sink. "Leo, you could just put them in the dishwasher in the kitchen," Cody said. "The dishwasher?" Leo didn't remember seeing one before. "Yeah, my mom just had it installed. She's been super busy the last couple of days. I don't know what's up. She bought the dishwasher and a ton of new clothes and shoes. A whole bunch of stuff. Women are scary." Cody finished with a 9-year-old sigh of worldly wisdom. Leo had to agree. He loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the counter. Without the chore of washing dishes, cooking did seem a lot easier. "Leo, these Cosmic Drifters comics are awesome. Are there only 3? There are a lot more," Leo said. "Take your time. When you're done with these, I'll get you the next ones. It's a great feeling when you finally collect the whole set. That's how I used to read comics." "Awesome. Thanks, Leo. But I have my own allowance. My mom doesn't take my red envelope money. She keeps a ledger for me. I have over $10,000 saved up. I just have to ask her if I want to buy something." Leo blinked. This kid has more money saved up than I do. "So, are you staying here for the break, or going somewhere?" Leo asked. "Mom said it depends on how I'm feeling. If I'm doing okay, we might go visit my grandparents." He pulled out his phone and showed Leo a picture of a yellow dog, a mixed breed, in a yard of what looked like a massive villa with a huge garden and a gazebo. "That's their dog." "Is that a park?" "Nope, that's my grandma and grandpa's house." Leo was stunned. Ms. Miller's family was this wealthy, and she was a great cook and beautiful. Why on earth did her ex-husband insist on a divorce? Was he allergic to a good life? He found himself wondering just how gorgeous the new wife must be. "Your mom seems pretty frugal," Leo observed. "Well, my dad was always starting businesses," Cody explained. "At first, my grandma gave my mom a lot of money to help him, but he kept failing. So my grandparents stopped giving them money, and my mom got into a huge fight with them over it. They didn't talk for a long time. Then my dad's business finally took off, and then he and my mom got divorced. I think my grandparents have forgiven her now. At least, that's what I heard them talking about." Leo absorbed this information. Lesson learned. Don't date an aspiring entrepreneur who constantly fails. He was getting ready to leave when the door clicked open. Ms. Miller was home. She was wearing a chic, cream-colored short-sleeve top with a small V-neck that fit her perfectly. A thin black leather belt with a small gold buckle cinched her waist. She wore it with a flowing black skirt that had a subtle gold pattern woven into it. On her feet were a pair of black high heels that made her pale calves look almost luminous. With her advisor roll gone, she had undergone a stunning transformation. Her dark, glossy hair was down, falling neatly over her shoulders. She wore light makeup that highlighted her features, delicate eyebrows, a high nose, red lips. A single white pearl earring adorned each earlobe. She was a vision of professional elegance. This was a completely different person from the woman with the soft ponytail he'd first met. This version made him nervous. He thought she wasn't coming back for lunch. And why did she look so amazing and act so stern? She was carrying a large shopping bag. Leo finally remembered his manners and took it from her. As she slipped off her heels, she leaned against the wall, gently shaking her feet, which were clad in sheer no-show socks. The puppy trotted over and began sniffing around her ankles. "Did you two eat?" Leo nodded obediently. Cody did the same. Leo had been about to leave, but now that she was back, it felt awkward to just bolt. Cody, however, having eaten and gotten his comics, politely announced he was going to his room to do his homework and promptly vanished. Just like me when I was a kid, Leo thought. Now it was just him and Ms. Miller. The atmosphere in the room felt strange. The way she was looking at him was different, almost playful. "Professor, do you trade stocks?" Leo blurted out, his brain short-circuiting. "I have a brokerage account." "Yes," she said, pulling out her phone. "There's not much in it. I just bought some bank stocks and let them sit for the dividends." She showed him the screen. Leo suddenly understood where Cody got the habit of just handing his phone over to people. He leaned in, curious to see what another person's portfolio looked like. Then he saw the 7-figure number. He counted the digits again. Yep, 7. That's not much money. She was definitely humble. She owned 2 stocks, both major banks. They were stable, low-risk investments. "Why do you ask all of a sudden?" she said. "The market is risky. Your economics professor lost tens of thousands trading." "Wow," Leo said. The professor who had taught him the only things he knew about stocks was a living cautionary tale. "It was my uncle, actually. He's a professor at Bridgeport Central. He told me to open an account and buy shares in Oceanic Freight Dynamics. He also told me not to tell anyone." Leo, the natural liar, delivered the line smoothly. "Ms. Miller gave him a look. He told you not to tell anyone, and you immediately told me." Leo felt his face heat up. "Well, you're not just anyone." "Nope, can't say that. You're Cody's mom." "Worse. I mean, I only told you. I won't tell anyone else." She watched the handsome young man fidget before her, his hair fluffy, his eyelashes long. He ran a hand through his hair when he got nervous, his fingers long and elegant. The other day, he'd been so bold, rubbing her back. Now he was back in his shell. She turned and handed him a bag. "You're going to Sean's hometown for the break. I pack you a few things." Leo took the clear pouch. Inside was a neatly organized first aid kit. Bug spray, hydrocortisone cream, Dramamine electrolyte powder, Dayquil, Tums, Pepto-Bismol, Claritin, ginger chews for nausea, Imodium, Sudafed, sunscreen, and a box of Band-Aids. Some of the boxes had little labels with instructions on them. He clutched the meticulously prepared kit and mumbled his thanks, not daring to meet her eyes. This felt like more than just a teacher's concern for a student, even if she claimed it was for all his roommates. And she wasn't even their advisor anymore. Leo practically fled the apartment. Laura watched him go, sensing his panic and avoidance. She stood there for a moment, staring at her phone. 10 years ago, the love-struck Laura Miller had given up everything for her ex-husband. 10 years later, she couldn't afford to be so reckless. She had a past, a child, and the memory of everyone's judgment. She had grown, stumbled, and struggled, but she still yearned for love. She opened her brokerage app. With a few taps, she sold $100,000 worth of her bank stock and bought shares of Oceanic Freight Dynamics. If the stock drops, she told herself, then it's a sign. It's wrong. I shouldn't make the same mistake twice. But if it rises, then I'll take it as a sign that we're meant to be. For a hopeless romantic, this was as close to self-control as she could get. She was leaving it up to the market. Back in the dorm, Jordan was out, having been roped into giving a professional beauty seminar by a junior. One of Jordan's side hustles was being a beauty consultant, and he was surprisingly good at it. Girls getting ready for internships would consult him on makeup and outfits. He was an authority on the subject. Alex was also gone, off on one of his mysterious ventures. Only Sean was there, hunched over his computer. Seeing that Sean had likely skipped lunch, Leo felt a pang of guilt for the feast he'd just had. He sprinted downstairs to the cafeteria, bought a loaded burrito bowl, and ran back up. He found Sean just about to make instant ramen. "Perfect," Leo said, handing him the bowl. "The cafeteria was out of soup, so this will go well with your ramen broth." Sean had seen Leo come back and then disappear again. He hadn't thought much of it, but he was touched that Leo had run out to get him food. "Leo, I still have money, you know? I think I can cash out from TikTok again soon." "I know. Consider it a thank you for stopping me from losing all my money in the stock market today. My treat." Sean didn't argue. He knew when to drop a subject. He could be a nag, but he tried to control it. His own parents repeated themselves constantly, and it drove him crazy. A burrito bowl with a side of ramen was a luxurious meal. Sean ate while scrolling through comments and checking his video stats on his laptop. He never ate a big meal when he was editing. It made him sleepy and killed his creative energy. A state of slight hunger was optimal for work. Leo put away the first aid kit, washed out his swim trunks, and lay down for a half-hour nap. He set an alarm. Ever since he'd gained control of his time, his days felt much fuller. After his nap, he'd study for another session, walk Moose, and then the evening would be free for him and Stella. He fell asleep instantly. Half an hour later, his alarm went off. He got up, splashed water on his face, and saw that Sean was now napping. Leo grabbed his backpack and headed out again. The study room was quiet. Colin was gone, probably in class. But Wendy Lou, the girl with the round glasses, was still there, studying intently. A damp washcloth lay on her desk. When she got tired, she'd press it to her face to wake herself up. Her dedication was inspiring. "Hey, Wendy," Leo said quietly. "What school are you applying to? Have you picked an advisor yet?" She pushed her glasses up her nose, a little shy. "My boyfriend goes to Penn State, in the Smeal College of Business. I want to go there for my master's." Leo gave her a thumbs up. "That's awesome. It's great to have a clear goal." "I actually applied there for undergrad, but my scores weren't high enough," she said with a small smile. "But it's okay. It's only been 4 years. We'll be together again soon." Looking at the mountain of notes in front of her, Leo felt a surge of admiration. "In 4 years, you might have lost a boyfriend who doesn't love you," he thought, "but your hard work will never betray you." He settled in and opened his textbook. He still didn't have a clear goal himself. Before, he was just drifting. Now, he was working hard, but toward what? He couldn't seriously be aiming for a career as a trophy husband, could he? He dove into his accounting textbook. When his head started to ache, he thought about the damp washcloth. It seemed like a good idea. The thought of the long fall break ahead was the only thing keeping him going. When he finished, his eyes were unfocused. The birds outside his window were gone. System. Host has diligently studied accounting, combining it with this morning's economics lesson and his recent stock market experience. The first half of the study session was highly efficient. Reward. Enhanced stamina buff, 1 day. With this buff, Host can sustain an activity for twice as long as usual. Leo stared blankly. "Oh wow, what am I supposed to do now that I have this? Don't mess with me, system. I'm still an innocent young man." After studying, Leo went downstairs. A girl and a dog were waiting for him at the familiar, friendly entrance. Today, Paige Kennedy was dressed in a cute white tank top with a large bow on the chest that strategically concealed her impressive figure. She wore a gray, tiered miniskirt that made her petite frame seem taller by showing off her legs. Her curly, golden brown hair was tied into 2 high pigtails, making her look extra fluffy. Around her neck, she wore a thick black choker with a crystal heart pendant. Moose wore a matching black collar. She was pacing around the patiently sitting dog until she saw Leo. Moose leaped up excitedly, bounding toward him and dragging a stumbling Paige along with him. Moose jumped up, sniffing him frantically. "Wait a second. My human smells like another puppy. Does he have other siblings?" "Woof. Woof. Explain yourself. Why do you smell like another dog?" Leo remembered the little golden retriever puppy at Ms. Miller's house. He had no explanation. He just knelt and gave Moose a thorough petting until the big dog was satisfied. Paige, the actual owner, was completely ignored. She couldn't believe it. She'd paid someone to walk her dog, and in the process, he'd stolen the dog's heart. At the hot dog stand, the vendor saw the young man again. First, he brings a tall, stunningly beautiful girl for a hot dog in the morning. Now, he's with a shorter, but incredibly cute, soft-looking girl in the afternoon. This kid has no shame, the vendor thought, shaking his head. Treating these gorgeous girls to a $3 hot dog. He didn't even get her a corn dog. That was for the dog. Unbelievable. Leo felt the vendor's disapproving glare, but couldn't figure out why. Paige was a grazer. She'd take a few bites of one snack, then move to the next, leaving the rest for Leo, who happily finished everything. She was different from Stella, who would finish her food neatly and rarely ate junk. Leo's appetite was huge now. He easily ate 1.5 hot dogs. Moose got 4 corn dogs and was in heaven. On the lawn, Moose was on his best behavior, trying to show Leo off to his owner. He wanted Paige to see how strong and obedient this new human was, hoping she would adopt him too. Leo was just trying to keep up. With Paige there, Moose was a bundle of hyperactive energy, chasing him, tugging him, nipping at him playfully. Leo ran and ran, his stamina seemingly endless, until he finally collapsed on the grass, exhausted. Paige sat on a picnic blanket, surrounded by snacks, watching her dog walk her dog walker. "You must be tired," she said, feeling a little guilty. She thought about raising his pay. 100 a day? 200? She wasn't sure how much money she had, but she wanted to give him more. In her sheltered world, she had no idea that for many people, $6,000 a month was a full-time salary. She just knew he worked hard, and she wanted to reward him. She fed Moose a treat, then held out a cherry tomato for Leo. He ate it without thinking, only then realizing she'd used the same hand Moose had just licked. When she offered another, he politely declined. "Paige," he said, sitting up, "I need to tell you something. I have a girlfriend." Her eyes went wide. Her face cycled through a series of emotions. "No, you don't," she said, her cheeks puffing out. "Sean didn't say you had a girlfriend." "It's true." "Then what does she look like?" "She's taller than you. Her face is a little smaller, her hair is shorter, her legs are longer, and she's probably a little leaner. And she's maybe a tiny bit paler than you, though you're already really pale." "Stop. You're just trying to make me mad," she said, her face flushing. Her big eyes blinked a few times, then filled with tears. "I don't believe you. You've been single all through college, and now you suddenly have a girlfriend? You're so clueless and goofy. Who would even like you except for me?" She finished her tirade and stomped away. Halfway across the lawn, she turned back and tried to drag Moose with her, but the dog planted his feet, refusing to budge. The betrayal made her laugh through her tears. Leo gathered her snacks, packed them in her bag, and walked Moose back toward her. Only then did the dog follow. He carried her bag for her as she walked beside him, fuming. Suddenly, she looked up at him. "Yesterday I was on a student trip, and I saw someone who looked like you at that noodle place, eating with a girl. Was that you?" He was surprised she'd seen them. "Yeah," he admitted. "I can't believe you," she wailed. "Every time I ask you to eat with me, you say you don't want to come over to the honors campus, but you'll come all the way over here to eat noodles with some other girl?" "Ugh." Leo guided her toward a less crowded path. "Please don't cry. People are going to think I did something." "Do you really have a girlfriend? You're not just saying that to get rid of me?" she asked, her voice small. "Then why do you still walk Moose for me?" "Because I like Moose," Leo said honestly. The words earned him a hard slap on the arm. Paige's palm turned red from the impact, and the sting brought fresh tears to her eyes. "What's so great about Moose?" she sobbed, looking up at him pitifully. "I'm great too. Why can't you like me?" She hadn't meant to confess. She just felt like if she didn't say it now, she never would. Leo looked at her. She was pretty, of course, but for some reason, from the very beginning, he'd never really seen her that way. There was no spark, no ambiguity. It was a purely platonic friendship. He gently explained the situation, and by the time he walked her and Moose back to her dorm, the air had been cleared. As he walked away, the system's voice chimed in. "System, host has diligently cared for a pet, managing the emotions of both the pet and the pet's owner. The pet is very happy. The pet's owner is very sad, but is satisfied with host care. Reward, growth of 0.1 cm, can be applied to any location." Leo, now 5'8", 5 foot, walked on a little stunned. He felt a strange, happy sort of annoyance. He had actually managed to turn down a pretty girl. So when a guy tells you it hurts him just as much as it hurts you, don't believe him. He's usually doing just fine. Watching Leo walk away without a second glance, Paige burst into a fresh wave of sobs. She pulled out her phone and called her roommate. "What do I do?" she cried, her voice thick with tears. "I confessed, and he said he has a girlfriend. I don't think he was lying just to reject me. I think he really has one. Wah, I didn't even like him that much before. It wasn't like I couldn't live without him. So why, now that he's rejected me, do I like him even more? Am I a bad person? Is that what this is?" Her roommate on the other end. "No, you're not a bad person. You're just a dramatic girl. What do I do?" Paige hiccuped. Moose, looking concerned, trotted back to his dog bed, picked up a sparkly bow headband, clumsily fitted it onto his own head with his paws, and then padded back to Paige, laying his head in her lap. "Woof! Smile." Paige looked at her ridiculous, sparkling dog, and a bubble of snot and tears escaped her nose. She gave his big, furry head a gentle punch. "Wah! He even likes you more than he likes me." Moose just tilted his head, utterly confused. "Woof! When you're young, you're supposed to be reckless. To fly. To love and hate with everything you've got. The whole world feels like it's open to you. I let a lot of good girls down chasing what I thought was love. I'll regret it when I'm old. But not now." Back in the dorm, Leo saw a notification for a $40 transfer from Paige Kennedy. He couldn't help but feel like the specific amount was a subtle dig, calling him a fool. He decided to let it go. Jordan was back, but instead of grinding away at League of Legends, he was hunched over his computer, completely focused. Leo leaned in for a look and saw him meticulously color-matching lipsticks. He'd sampled a patch of skin from a photo of someone's face to use as a base, then arranged different lipstick shades underneath it for comparison. Leo had never been able to tell the difference between two shades of red, but seeing them side by side like this, he had to admit some just looked right, while others clashed. "What are you doing?" "Color analysis," Jordan said, not looking up. figuring out which lipstick shades work for cool, warm, and neutral skin tones. I landed a huge gig. A bunch of girls are paying me to find the perfect lipstick for their complexion. $20 a pop. Leo understood the words, but the concept was alien. Was that what color analysis was? And what were cool and warm tones? $20 just to recommend a lipstick. He was out there running himself ragged, walking a dog for $15 an hour, and these girls were shelling out $20 for a color recommendation? Seeing Leo's bewildered expression, Jordan puffed out his chest. In Korea, this stuff costs a fortune. They hook you up to all these machines, scan your face, give you a whole data report. A basic session is like $100, and the high-end places can run you over $1,000. All for the same result. I'm giving them a killer deal. It's just basic color theory. Anyone who's messed around with Photoshop can figure it out. Leo still didn't totally get it, but he was impressed by Jordan's hustle. For a guy whose family could buy the campus, he was surprisingly dedicated to making his own cash, no matter how small the amount. Hey, Leo, Jordan said, spinning in his chair. Can I borrow your face? I need to update my beauty channel. Leo started to back away, but Jordan deployed his ultimate weapon. He puckered his lips and whined in a horrible baby voice. I'll even throw in a gift for my bestie. Please? For me? Please. Leo surrendered. The triple-pronged assault of cringe was more effective than a tranquilizer dart. It would be days before he could think about anything weird again. So much for his unshakable core. His defenses were completely shattered. After a shower, Leo found himself pinned to a chair while Jordan filmed a tutorial on choosing the right lipstick for your skin tone. Dude, no joke, Jordan said, dabbing something on Leo's lips. Your face is perfect for makeup. Your skin is so smooth. Seriously, being in love is making you glow. You're way hotter now. Shut up and get this over with, Leo grumbled, his lips feeling thick and sticky. I have a date to get to. Sean was recruited as the cameraman. It was a shoestring production, set against the backdrop of their dorm room. Thankfully, they'd cleaned up recently, so there were no dirty socks or underwear decorating the floor. With Sean behind the phone, Leo felt relaxed, and Jordan was in his element, his natural lack of shame making him a confident host. When they wrapped, Sean, the cinematographer, was paid with a box of assorted lipsticks. Leo, the model, received a bottle of what Jordan claimed was insanely expensive eye cream. Leo had never used the stuff in his life, but Jordan insisted that older women loved it, so he decided to mail it to his mom. The whole video shoot took an hour for what would probably be edited down to a few minutes of content. Leo set his system's time bar to learning to be a competent model. To his surprise, it was approved. Reward: left eye vision improved by +0. 5 diopters. That was a new one. Setting new categories could unlock new types of rewards. His prescription was around -2. 50 in that eye, so now it was -2. 0. The world seemed a tiny bit clearer. At this rate, he'd have superhuman sniper vision in no time. Jordan offered to buy dinner, but Leo, a man with a date, righteously declined. He felt a surge of pride. He was turning down free food. He'd really made it. He scrubbed the makeup off his face, feeling 100 times better. Jordan had made him look vaguely effeminate. Clean-faced and refreshed, he got dressed. Tonight's outfit was the white Saint Laurent t-shirt, a pair of khaki shorts from some no-name brand, the New Balance collab sneakers, and the Rolex. He was almost a complete walking billboard for his benefactors. The only things that were his were the shorts his mom bought him and the shoes from Ms. Miller. Looking in the mirror, he thought he might have actually gotten a little taller. Or maybe his better posture just made him seem taller. His whole state of being felt elevated. The campus was buzzing with students as he walked, a palpable energy in the air. Fall break was just around the corner. It was always like this. After a long summer, the last few weeks were pure boredom, and you couldn't wait to get back to campus. Then, after a month of classes, the burnout would hit, and fall break arrived like a saving grace. He knew it would be different after graduation. Life would get cruel. If you work far from home, you'd only get 2 real breaks a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Forget about vacation days. You were just another wage slave, too scared to take time off for fear your boss would realize the company ran just fine without you. At first, you'd brave the holiday traffic to go home. Then you'd build a life in a new city, have kids, and slowly, the trips back would become rarer. Too many people, not enough time. Your hometown would become a memory, and you'd see your parents maybe once a year. The people who raised you, reduced to an annual visit. And one day, his own kids would do the same, packing their bags and heading off for a distant life. That was the reality for most people. That's why he had to try to be one of the lucky ones. He was in the final year of the tutorial level, an apprentice wage slave in training. But he wasn't thinking about the future. People who hadn't lived that life couldn't truly believe it could be so unforgiving. And besides, he had the system now. He was the master of his own time. The future was long. He strode toward Stella. She looked beautiful tonight. Then again, she looked beautiful every night. But under the evening lights, she was something else. The fountain and the campus lighting seemed to exist just for her. She wore a black, sleeveless dress made of a material that felt like a fine suit. It was a simple cut, almost like a single piece of fabric with armholes, except for the two interlocking C's embroidered on her left hip. He had no idea how much it cost, but it looked expensive. The black was sophisticated, like a cocktail dress, but the cut was playful, showing off her slender, pale arms. On her feet were simple black flat sandals. A black, diamond-quilted lambskin bag with a gold chain and a matching double C logo was slung over her shoulder. Leo instinctively took the bag from her. It was surprisingly heavy. As he drew closer, he noticed she was wearing earrings for the first time, tiny, sparkling double C clips on her earlobes. He felt a pang of disappointment. She's defending herself. How was he supposed to nibble on her earlobes now? But her lips were extra glossy tonight, shimmering like hard candy, practically begging to be bitten. Stella hadn't just changed into Chanel. She put on a little makeup, a touch of mascara, eyeshadow, and lipstick with a light foundation that only highlighted her already flawless skin and sharp features. She had done it alone in her dorm room, too self-conscious to apply it in front of her roommates. It felt too serious, too formal. She wanted to show him she was serious, but worried that being too serious would scare him off. The second time, riding in a chauffeur town car, Leo was more used to it. Jordan had explained that these were executive class cars, starting at 60 grand, a step up from the standard black cars that were closer to 30. The service was a little better. The driver opened the door and offered a polite greeting. Still, Leo thought, he wasn't as handsome as Professor Hoffman's driver. You couldn't guarantee a handsome driver with an app. The car pulled up to the base of a skyscraper. A hostess guided them to an elevator that whisked them up to the 87th floor. The St. Regis rooftop garden. The hallway was lined with fresh flowers, and the lamps looked like they were made of crystal. The decor was opulent but quiet. They were led to a window-side table, reserved in advance, with the best view in the house. The entire city spread out below them, a glittering tapestry. Buildings that looked colossal from the street were now just tiny pillars. Leo felt his world expanding again. If love had tears, Stella was grandmaster level. He doesn't have money? That's fine, I have plenty. He's never seen the world? I'll show it to him. He's fighting his way up to reach me? I'll lower my hand to meet him. The comments started rolling in on Jordan's TikTok. That face looks kind of familiar. Wait, isn't that the guy from the Roommate Chronicles? OMG, it is. The wholesome roommate is moonlighting as a beauty model. I'm dead. El Mayo, I follow this creator for his makeup tips. They're actually super helpful and easy to follow, but I could never get past his face. No offense. For real, every time I see that puffy face, I can't finish the video. Which is a shame, cause his advice is way better than all those influencers just shilling products. Hey, don't be mean. He has great skin, super clear. You guys are so judgmental. I just cover his face with my thumb, and listen, it works great. The roommate's face is a work of art, though. I am here for this. I can't believe the 2 TikTok accounts I follow just had a crossover episode. Wild. Go check out his main page. There's a new one of him making tea today. I feel like I'm raising him, watching him grow day by day. He's so disciplined, so multi-talented. He can even do a whole tea ceremony. /S, is no one going to mention the old guy teaching him? Anyone recognize him? I do. That's Dr. Sterling. I know him. That's Dr. Arthur Sterling, the head judge for the National Tea Tasting Championship. Can't believe he's just casually brewing tea with a college kid smirk emoji. Smirk emoji, our university president couldn't get a meeting with him, but he's got time to teach some rando student how to make tea. What a vibe. I'm on my period and my cramps are killing me. But I just watched this video of the roommate making tea, and now my stomach doesn't hurt anymore. Seriously, if I'm lying, I'll eat 8 ice cream bars. To the person above me, don't you know they were called that brand for listeria? You'd be better off eating crap. Garbage content. Just here for my daily dose of hate. All these followers are obviously bots. So lame. The roommate is so hot. Just checking in on my future son-in-law. His tea skills are on point. Can't wait for him to make me a cup in person. This is so staged. Don't believe it. The comments are all fake. Is no one going to ask what kind of tea that is? Is no one going to talk about the old lady with him? Does anyone know who she is? Can we get a lore master in here? Replying to above. I know, but if I say, I'm in big trouble. He's so handsome. The way he makes tea is just, wow, that's my roommate. What kind of loser college student makes tea? So stupid. The cameraman is always filming the roommate. Bet he's gay. So boring. I don't get the point of these videos or why so many people watch them. TikTok is getting dumber by the day. Sean had posted the video of Leo making tea that afternoon. It had blown up, pulling in a ton of views from somewhere, but with the new traffic came a wave of hate. Some of the comments were downright abusive, with strings of asterisks censoring wishes of ill will upon every female member of his family. In his day-to-day life, Sean had rarely encountered such pure malice. The worst he'd ever gotten was being called a poor schmuck. No one had ever attacked his character. Now, suddenly, a flood of comments were calling him a fraud and a hack. He was stunned, and a cloud of depression began to settle over him. He thought he'd filmed it well, just a simple video documenting Leo's life. It wasn't aggressive or boastful. It was just interesting. Life was made up of these small, everyday moments, wasn't it? And it showed Leo's positive, driven side. Why were people so angry? The insults, calling him gay bait and worse, left him reeling. Jordan noticed Sean's mood, and after finding out what was wrong, burst out laughing. "Dude, this means you're about to blow up," he said. "Did anyone ever hate on your videos of Megan?" "Nope, but nobody watched them either." In the age of viral content, you gotta listen to the greats. It's like what Dave Chappelle says, half the paycheck is for taking the abuse. These guys hating on you are just pumping your engagement. "Here, look at my channel." Jordan sent Sean a link to his beauty TikTok. Sean, having no interest in the subject, had rarely looked at it. But when he opened it, he saw that the comments were just as vicious, full of jokes about Jordan's weight. Jordan, however, gave as good as he got, ignoring some and firing back at others. "At first, I'd get into it with them," Jordan explained. "I'd argue all night, from dusk till dawn. I'm a student, I've got nothing but time. But after a while, it just got boring. Now, unless I'm in a bad mood and need to blow off some steam, I just pick one or two and let them have it. It's a great stress reliever. Look, the video of Leo modeling for me today is already getting some heat. A whole new wave of haters just dropped in." Sean was in awe. He didn't have the guts to fight back against the worst comments. Jordan treated TikTok like a game, but for Sean, it was becoming his entire world. He couldn't afford to be impulsive or let his emotions get the best of him, even though he desperately wanted to type, "Get a life, you pathetic troll. I'll film what I want." Jordan's pep talk helped stabilize him. It was true. Jordan was the heir to a fortune, and yet he put himself out there, letting strangers mock his weight, and he just laughed it off. The comments on his own channel were nasty, but they were split pretty evenly between attacking him and attacking Leo. At least the hate was being shared. And for every bizarre or insulting comment, there were more praising him. People complimented his improving camera work, saying he had a good eye and was capturing the roommate's spirit perfectly. As the views climbed, the positive comments quickly drowned out the negative ones. There were a few coordinated attempts to start flame wars, but they never gained traction. The overwhelming consensus was positive. Seeing that Sean's morale was still shaky, Jordan dragged him downstairs to shoot some hoops. Back at the restaurant, on his second visit to such a luxurious place with Stella, Leo felt more composed. Still, gazing out at the dense forest of high-rises, with a sliver of the bay visible in the distance, he felt a strange surge of emotion. Not excitement, exactly, but a kind of vertigo that came from seeing the world from such a great height. Tables around them began to fill. At a table to their right, a trio of people who radiated corporate power strode in, their presence commanding, reminding him a little of Penelope Hayes. Having met a few big shots recently, Leo didn't feel as intimidated as he once would have. But when the menu came, he was lost again. He handed it to Stella. Tonight's dinner, where even the napkins probably cost more than his entire breakfast, was Stella's half of their going Dutch agreement. "You handle breakfast, I'll handle dinner." So fair, right? Where was the fairness in that? Leo felt an urge to bounce his leg onto the table. He started, then stopped, remembering a dinner with his aunt and uncle. He'd been jiggling his leg, and his uncle had gently patted it. "Don't," he'd said. The memory stuck. His uncle was a serious man, especially when he wore his glasses and wasn't talking. Jiggling your leg made you look restless, and it betrayed your anxiety. It didn't even help. The faster you jiggled, the more nervous you looked. He forced his leg still, and his mind cleared. From head to toe, he radiated an aura of someone untainted by money. In other words, he was broke. He did his best to relax, as Stella ordered. She ordered quite a bit. She wasn't showing off. She simply explained each dish to him as she went, occasionally asking the waiter for details on preparation and checking if Leo had any allergies. They were sitting side by side, not across from each other, which made it feel more intimate. The waiter stood by patiently, slightly bowed, answering every question. By the time they were done, they had practically reviewed the entire menu. The corporate types at the next table were already deep in a business discussion. "Do you drink?" Stella asked. The question sent a jolt of heat through him. Alcohol, he heard, was a social lubricant. Get your mind out of the gutter. His tolerance was terrible. He was not a long-lasting performer. Stella, on the other hand, looked like she could hold her liquor. A guy had to be careful drinking out in the world, or he could get taken advantage of. He nodded. "A little. I'm not much of a drinker either," she said. "So we'll just have a little." She ordered a bottle of red wine. It wasn't an 82 Lafite, but a custom vintage from the St. Regis itself. The waiter described its flavor profile as uniquely complex. Leo glanced at the price, $2.50. So much for his assumption that his savings could cover a few dates. It might not even cover one. Stella ordered the dry-aged steak. The beef here wasn't sold by the pound like at the grocery store. This cow, apparently, had lived a happy life, raised on a diet of classical music and constant, loving attention. A well-cared-for life, which was why it was so expensive. A whole cow back home cost a couple $1,000s. Here, a single kilogram was nearly that much. Leo didn't usually feel financial pressure. In the dorm, with Sean as the baseline, he was doing just fine. But next to Stella, he was completely out of his league. The dinner itself was pleasant. The restaurant was spacious, the tables generously spaced. The waiters, dressed in crisp suits, were unobtrusive unless you looked their way, at which point they would approach with a smile. As night fell, the city lit up, the streets below clogging with traffic, the cars like a river of glittering stars. The ridiculously expensive steak was, predictably, delicious. It was unbelievably tender, melting in his mouth, the flavor rich and savory without being gamey. For a meat lover, it was heaven. Every bite was pure satisfaction. But it was rich. You couldn't eat too much. It paired perfectly with the red wine. He'd always found wine harsh. But tonight, under the dazzling lights with the dazzling girl beside him, he tasted the beauty in it for the first time. The liquid coated his tongue with a symphony of flavors, bitter, sweet, sour, and tart, all mingling before sliding smoothly down his throat. After one glass, he felt his whole body unwind. The urge to jiggle his leg was gone. His back wasn't so ramrod straight. He no longer felt like people were watching him. The wine was expensive, and it felt like a waste not to finish it. Every time the waiter saw his glass was empty, he refilled it. It didn't seem to have much of an effect. Stella, meanwhile, only took small sips. By the time he realized the waiter was only refilling his glass, the buildings below had started to sway. Stella was swaying too. He reached out and grabbed her, pulling her close. "Stella, stop moving," he slurred. "You're making me dizzy." The Caroline Astor Suite, 79th floor of the St. Regis, 1,450 square feet, one king-sized bed. Suites in five-star hotels were almost always furnished with a single large bed. The kind of people who needed separate beds rarely needed a suite. Stella had stayed here once before, for her sophomore birthday. Her mother had flown in and booked the room, but her father never showed up, and her parents had spent half the night screaming at each other over the phone. Stella ended up sleeping on the living room sofa. Off-season, the room went for over $1,000 a night. When you don't have to worry about survival, you find a whole universe of other things to worry about. Sometimes she found life unbearably boring. Why are we alive? What's the point? She had no personal goals. She was just moving toward the ones her mother had set for her, as if her own life had nothing to do with her. On the surface, she was the model of a successful young woman. Inside, she was not. In her heart, she was more like her father, Richard Vance. He projected an image of honest reliability, but in the business world, he had systematically devoured his competitors and partners alike, growing stronger and stronger until he had built his empire. Richard Vance had started as a low-level grunt in the fracking fields, then pivoted to selling specialized equipment. The real money came when he leveraged everything to gamble on a new drilling site that struck one of the biggest shale oil deposits of the decade, a claim he had to fight, literally and figuratively, to keep. His business dealings since then had been much more polished. Stella seemed like a sweet, docile creature who had stumbled into the world, but in reality, she was the leopard, silently waiting to hunt. Perhaps she wasn't consciously that calculating, but the results of her thoughts and actions were the same. A leopard has no ill intent when it plays with a kitten, but the kitten still ends up dead. The leopard is sad. It considered the kitten a friend. Her perspective and life experience put her on a completely different level from Leo. Before, she had been disciplined and driven, with almost no weaknesses. And now she still had none. She was sure of it. except she couldn't seem to push away the boy clinging to her like a koala. He was surprisingly strong. She was a single child, so her parents had hired private instructors to teach her kickboxing and self-defense. She was fit and powerful, not the kind of girl who needed someone to open a jar for her. She had the strength and the technique, yet she couldn't budge him. In high school, a boy who thought he was the king of the school, probably after watching too many teen dramas, had started harassing her. He was handsome and tall, and the other students would just laugh and cheer him on. It must have been her rebellious phase, because she'd ended up putting him in the hospital. Richard Vance had been called to the school to pay for the medical bills, and the boy transferred shortly after. The incident had an effect on her. She hadn't been hurt, but she was ostracized by all the girls. The boys didn't shun her, but they were certainly afraid of her. She'd had long hair then. She cut it short after that. She became even colder. She didn't like tall, jock-type guys who were too aware of their own good looks. Leo was none of those things. He wasn't big, nor was he conceited. When they first met, he had seemed perfectly ordinary, completely non-threatening, with the sole exception of his captivating voice. And now, this non-threatening boy was clinging to her, and she couldn't push him away. That lovely voice was murmuring in her ear. Stella, how are we going to get back to campus? The dorms are going to lock up. Stella, I should keep track of your, so I can bring you chocolate. Stella, you're beautiful when you're serious, but even more beautiful when you smile. Stella, I want to learn how to paint. I could start now. Do you think it's too late? I could learn, and I could paint you. Stella, do you like watermelon? In the summer, my grandma used to chill them in the old well at her farm. It was the best thing ever. Stella, have you seen the first snow of the year? I want to see it with you. Stella, what's your favorite flower? Stella, let's watch the sunset together sometime. Stella, do you own a mermaid dress? Stella, I don't like coffee, but if you made it for me, I'd drink it. Stella, what do you look like when you're sleeping? I really want to know. Stella, I want to take a picture of you every day. Stella, you like reading travel journals. I like them too. Stella, sometimes I just want to hold you, just like this, and do nothing else. Stella, can we fly on a plane together sometime? And look at the clouds. Stella, let's get a dog together. Stella. At first, she just wanted to push him away, and she could have if she'd really tried. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. He was drunk, clinging to her, almost like a child. He kept rambling. She had been about to ask him if the girl he was playing tennis with was Moose's owner, but she stopped herself. She didn't want to become like her mother, suspicious and paranoid. Her mother wasn't suspicious of her father. She was suspicious of herself. Since she couldn't push him away, she let him hold her and listen to his drunken chatter. His voice was so beautiful, especially whispering in her ear. Being held by him wasn't so bad, even if he was a little strong. But as she listened, a sharp pang of sorrow pierced her heart. His words were just drunken nonsense, meaningless. Yet every sentence felt like a promise he was making to her. He never said, "Don't leave me," but every word felt like he was begging her to stay. Suddenly, Stella kissed him. A soft, exploratory kiss on his forehead, then his nose, and finally his lips. She was learning as she went, her lips parting slightly, their tongues meeting. Embracing, kissing. Kissing, embracing. The city lights glittered outside the 180-degree windows. In the distance, a slender tower on the bay shone like a pearl on the water. The island itself looked like a small dolphin with a jewel on its head. She loved dolphins. On her birthday, she had lain on this very sofa, staring at that island for hours. Now, she had no time to look at the island, the tower, or the bay. She was drowning in a different kind of bay. There was no one else around, just two young people just starting to fall for each other, exploring with their lips and hands. Leo was drunk. Drunk again. His head was spinning. He'd never drunk this much in his life. He'd never had a reason to. When he got together with friends from high school, they'd grab some beers at a barbecue, but he always found it too bitter, usually opting for hard cider instead. This was the first time he'd ever been truly drunk. The red wine had a sweet note that had tricked him, and he'd lost count of the glasses. He was a good drunk, though. He wasn't starting fights or crying. He was just a little chatty. Very chatty. Then, in the middle of his rambling, Stella had kissed him. Kissing, it turned out, didn't require lessons. It was instinct, and deep kisses led to deep feelings. He wasn't sure how it happened, but as they kissed, his hands started moving on their own. Stella had only meant to shut him up, but then she was lost in the kiss until she felt a hand slide under her dress and cup her breast. She bit down hard. Leo yelped in pain and pulled back, but his hand didn't move. Their reflection was visible in the vast, dark window. The boy, leaning back on the sofa. The girl, straddling him, her dress still on because Leo couldn't for the life of him find the zipper. His hand had snuck up from the hem, pushing the knee-length skirt up to her waist. She was wearing a pair of white panties with a small, blue teddy bear on the back. His hand was still under her dress. "Let go," Stella said, her voice dangerously low. "No," Leo said, blood on his lips. He squeezed gently. "MMPH. Let me kiss you again, and I'll let go." Leo licked his lips. The taste of blood was coppery. She bit like a dog. Her response was a sharp slap across his face. Okay, he let go. The drunkenness evaporated. This time he was truly sober. So, Stella was actually mad. He thought ladies were supposed to be gentle. But Stella was no gentle lady. Biting was one thing, but hitting? All he did was squeeze a little, and it was through her bra. Thinking back, her bra was pretty thin. Jordan had been going on about some trend on Instagram where girls wore these super thin bras, just enough to prevent any show-through. Apparently, being flat-chested was in because it made you look thinner. Leo didn't get it, but he had to admit the lack of padding was nice. It wasn't like grabbing a handful of foam. So that's what they felt like. Soft at first, then firm with a nice bounce. He really wanted to bite one, yeah, right? Dream on. She actually hit him. She did not play by the rules. Completely sober now, Leo took in his surroundings. The living room was massive, bigger than the private dining room his entire extended family used for holiday dinners. A huge sofa, a plush rug, and a bedroom with a giant bed, white sheets, and 4 pillows. Another slap, this time on the back of his head. "I'm gonna go wash up," Stella said, climbing off him. Okay, so his face stung a little, but it wasn't that bad. Pro tip, if a girl is sitting on your lap when she slaps you, it doesn't really hurt. It just smarted a little. Together, she shot him a withering glare and shoved him toward the other bathroom. He'd live and learn. He had now seen a single hotel room with 2 bathrooms. Did a suite really need 2? Maybe it made sense. For a young couple on their first overnight trip, it would be pretty embarrassing to use the same toilet. You might not be able to perform. Leo took a shower himself. The hot water felt amazing, like the full-service showers he missed so much. In the dorm, it was all bucket and ladle. He was starting to think his daily desire to go swimming was really just a desire for a proper shower. The hot water streamed over him, filling the bathroom with steam and washing away the last of the alcohol fumes. Drinking really did make you dumber. He tried to recall a single thing about calculus and came up blank. At least he remembered he had to be at the airport tomorrow morning to pick up Professor Reed's friend. Still, his IQ had definitely taken a hit. How had he just ended up staying out all night? He didn't even have his ID. How did Stella check them in? Presidential suite? A long-term rental? That didn't seem right. She took chauffeured cars, but she didn't have a dedicated driver waiting for her. Aside from her casual extravagance, she seemed pretty low-key. Every time he was with her, he was caught off guard. After his shower, he felt too awkward to walk out in just a towel. So he put his clothes back on. Luckily, he hadn't thrown up, so they were still clean. His underwear was fresh, too. No holes, unlike Sean's. A sudden thought struck him. Sean probably wasn't planning on getting lucky anytime soon. At least, not until he bought new underwear. A guy really needed to wear decent underwear when he went out. He checked the time. There was no way he could get back to the dorms now. He had to let the guys know. He sent a quick text. "Hey, I'm staying out tonight. Have to be at the airport early to pick someone up. Won't be back." Replies came in instantly. Apparently, no one was asleep. "Sean, roger that. Be safe. Jordan, remember to bring an umbrella." Winky face. "Alex, overnight leave approved. Bring an umbrella." "Reo, no aksangarabuda. No." What were these animals talking about? He felt like he had zero chance of using an umbrella. Stella was way more intimidating than he'd expected. She actually hit him. She seemed to be taking a long time in the shower. Leo waited in the living room, not daring to go into the bedroom. He'd showered and texted his roommates, and still no Stella. The view was incredible, even better than from the restaurant. But the room was so big it felt empty. He lay down on the sofa and stared at the ceiling, which had polished, silver-colored panels that were reflective as a mirror. He could see himself lying there. Then he saw the system's time bar flashing over his head. 23 to 6 o'clock. Time for rest. Good sleep leads to good digestion and helps prevent diabetes, high blood pressure, baldness, and kidney problems. Be a healthy trophy husband. Go to sleep. Are you kidding me? Leo thought. Can't you see I'm in the middle of something here? What couple gets together for the first time and just goes to sleep? You don't want a trophy husband. You want a monk. Then again, wasn't the legendary monk Tang Sanzang the original trophy husband? It was his usual bedtime, but there was no way he could sleep now. The wine had made him drowsy, but actually falling asleep would be a total failure of manhood. He waited, and he was actually starting to doze off when Stella finally came out. It had probably only been half an hour, but it felt like an eternity. He must have drifted off for a moment. When he opened his eyes again, he saw her, damp and flushed. Her hair was half dry, and her face was pink from the steam. She had changed into pajamas, a set of white, short-sleeve pajamas. Leo had looked in a guest bathroom. There was only a bathrobe. But Stella was wearing a cute, homey-looking set, with little ruffled hems on the sleeves and shorts. The shorts were very short, leaving an expanse of smooth leg. Seeing Leo again, her face grew even hotter. Her right breast, where he had touched her, felt like it was burning. It was as if she could feel a pulse there. She imagined it was suddenly a little bigger than the left one. She had packed a large Chanel tote bag with her pajamas, ID, and toiletries. That's why it felt so heavy. She had come prepared, and she had done it the night before she was due to see her mother. He didn't know what kind of self-destructive impulse had possessed her to book this suite. After his shower and a moment to rest, a sliver of Leo's IQ returned. And with it, a crucial question. Wait a minute. If we were just going out to dinner, why did you bring pajamas? And if you brought pajamas, why did you hit me? That's just wrong. Sleeping in a hotel was exhausting. The pillows were wrong. The mattress was too soft. The bedmate was also too soft. It was probably mostly because the bedmate was too soft. Young guys have strong backs. They can handle a soft bed. Last night, Leo had tried to change the time bar. Sleeping together was rejected by the system. He tried studying together. Rejected. Finally, learning how to fall asleep with someone else in the bed was approved. He successfully fell asleep 3 times. He was nervous and shy, but also incredibly excited. The alcohol was still buzzing in his system, making him bolder than usual. Stella had glared at him, saying fiercely no. Normally, that would have scared him off, but she had brought her own pajamas. She was saying one thing and meaning another. That had to mean no, don't stop, right? The pajamas were easy to remove, but she wouldn't let him. He could touch, but he couldn't take them off. It didn't matter. The fabric was thin, very touchable. He woke up once at 2, again at 3:30, and again at 5. It felt like he'd been asleep the whole time, but also like he hadn't slept at all. Lying there, holding Stella, he finally understood the purpose of the mirrored panels on the ceiling. You could feel her front and see her back at the same time. His hand rested on her shorts. Anything more earned him a slap, but that was okay. He could take it. He studied the bedroom ceiling. He watched the city lights outside the window. He stared at the distant lighthouse until the city finally went dark and the sky began to lighten. He felt like he hadn't slept a wink. He loved the feeling of her draped over him. In those moments, she seemed so small and delicate, not fierce at all, just soft, warm, and fragrant. Stella slept in fits and starts, constantly being woken up by the man, licking her like a dog. They had fulfilled one of his drunken ramblings. They watched the sunrise together from bed. A man who's 70% drunk is just acting to make you cry, one of his readers had once commented. Leo had probably just been rambling, but Stella had remembered. When she woke up, she was draped over him. She pried his sleepy eyes open and smushed his face, insisting he get up to watch the sunrise. It wasn't a brilliant dawn. At first, the sun was trapped behind a thick bank of clouds. Then, it broke free, peeking its head out before leaping into the sky, burning away the morning mist. Stella said her mother was picking her up from campus today, so she had to get back early. She was up and in the shower, washing her hair and changing back into yesterday's black dress. But as soon as she was dressed, Leo pounced, kissing her until the dress was wrinkled again. A sudden realization dawned on Leo. This must be why the girl from the business school always had a wrinkled dress when she came back to campus in the morning. If he had his way, Stella's dress wouldn't just be wrinkled. The hem would be permanently curled up. They went down to the 59th floor for the breakfast buffet. It was miles ahead of the one from the conference hotel where he'd been Professor Reed's bag carrier. The driver, Walt, called to ask when he should set off. "Walt, you could just head straight to the airport," Leo said. "I'm in the city, so I'll meet you there." "No problem at all, Mr. Foster," Walt said cheerfully. "I've got nothing else on the schedule today. It's all on your time. Just tell me where you are, and I'll swing by and pick you up on the way." "Okay, then. I'm at the St. Regis on the waterfront." "Thanks, Walt. Not a problem. Not a problem at all, sir. Take your time. I'll call you when I arrive." Hearing St. Regis, Walt instinctively switched to formal address. He'd been to that parking garage once. It was the tallest building in Bridgeport, and he'd heard the hotel was the most expensive. Most decent hotels in the city topped out around $200 a night. The St. Regis started at $400 for a standard room. It was normal for college students to get a room. Everyone knew the deal, but they usually stayed at Holiday Inn or, if they were splurging, a Sheraton or Hilton. Staying at the St. Regis was rare, very rare. This kid was a true high roller. Walt was envious. To be that young, with a strong back, a healthy prostate, a steady stream, no diabetes, no stomach problems, and enough money to take a girl to the St. Regis. Walt was truly envious. Envious of his youth and his wealth. He could, if he gritted his teeth, afford a $400 room for a night. But his stamina wasn't what it used to be. It wouldn't be worth it. $400 for a night, and he'd be done in 10 minutes. A waste of money. If any other student had made him wait, he'd be grumbling. But for a student staying at the St. Regis, he was happy to make a detour. Life experience had taught him that detours like this were shortcuts. Leo ate a lot at breakfast. He felt like he'd pulled an all-nighter. He desperately needed a buff for wakefulness. He chugged a large cup of bitter coffee. He drank honey water. The buffet had a fresh honeycomb on display where you could scoop out the honey yourself. Nothing helped. He had expended a lot of physical and mental energy. Although the ultimate consummation hadn't occurred, he completed about half the ceremony. The vase-like boy was no longer just an empty vase. Youth was amazing. You could do nothing all night and still be exhausted. Stella ate a moderate amount. Not too much, not too little. Despite being subjected to the same night of torment, constantly being kissed awake, she was bright-eyed and full of energy. The only sign of the night's activities was the slight wrinkling of her designer dress. She was in a hurry to get back to her dorm and change before her mother, Victoria Vance, with her eagle eyes, saw it and had a fit. There was still time, Mrs. Vance had been in D.C. for a few days on business and was flying back this morning. The difference between having slept together and not was this. Before, if Stella offered him a piece of food, Leo would take it with his hand or open his mouth. Now he just leaned over and bit it right out of her fingers. Exactly like a dog. He'd then spit it out into his own hand. He didn't find it gross at all. After breakfast, there was no time to linger. No, Stella said sternly. Absolutely not. She had to get back to campus immediately, or she'd be late. At checkout, Leo stood beside her, his face flushing. A couple at the counter next to them were also checking out. The wife was handling the payment, but they were clearly a married couple with a kid in tow. Leo and Stella, on the other hand, looked like a young couple where the girl was paying. After Stella settled the bill, Leo said righteously, "We'll go Dutch on this too. Next one's on me." Stella smirked. "In your dreams." "No way." Walt parked the car in the St. Regis's underground garage. A nice hotel really was different. At a normal place, the valets would either ignore him or tell him to move along. Here, an attendant in a crisp uniform jogged over, greeted him politely, and upon learning he was there for a pickup, guided him to a spot near the entrance that was convenient for waiting and wouldn't block traffic. Today, Walt was driving one of the university's cars, a Buick minivan. It was professional, not fancy, but not shabby either. Walt took good care of it, keeping it spotlessly clean inside and out. He was careful about smoking, too, avoiding it entirely before pickup or stepping far away for a quick puff. A lot of the professors and administrators didn't like the smell. He didn't have tenure or a permanent contract, but driving for the university was an easy gig, much better than long-haul trucking. The pay and benefits were decent. He was close to home, and the academics were all polite and cultured. It was a comfortable job, and he wanted to keep it, so he was proactive. He got out and had a smoke, then texted Leo that he'd arrived. While he was smoking, a Mercedes sedan with a standing hood ornament pulled up next to him. Walt had always loved that classic look, and he watched it with an envious eye. The Mercedes also parked, apparently waiting for someone. A few moments later, he saw two figures emerge from the lobby. It looked like the foster kid. Walt quickly stubbed out his cigarette and got back in the car to avoid any awkwardness. A driver was better off not knowing too much. The St. Regis had a ground floor reception area just for greeting guests and handling luggage before directing them to the main check-in on the 59th floor. Walt cranked up the AC to air out any lingering smoke smell. He then saw Leo walk out of the hotel, holding hands with a young woman. They passed through the revolving doors and walked right up to the Mercedes. The girl was tall and had the poised, polished look of a good student from a wealthy family. Having driven trucks all over the country, Walt had seen a lot, which was why he appreciated the simple, sheltered environment of the university. The girl looked innocent, but the boy, maybe not so much. This kid really knew how to live. He even called a Mercedes for her. Walt watched as Leo saw her into the car, then he called him. Leo had said his goodbyes to Stella. He'd never understood why. In movies, chauffeurs would place a hand on the car's roof when opening the door. It always looked like some kind of power move. But as he guided Stella into the car, his own hand instinctively went to the same spot, shielding her head. If she bumped it, she'd hit his soft hand instead of the hard frame. He'd already spotted the university minivan. They both pretended not to notice. They were adults. They could maintain this small, unspoken agreement. Leo felt his skin had gotten thicker. The moment he'd walked out of that hotel, he felt he'd transformed from a boy into a man. He was a man who had spent the night with a woman. He was powerful now, even if he was still a virgin. He got into the Buick and greeted Walt, who then pulled out and headed for the airport. He's not even a little bit embarrassed, Walt thought. A true rich kid. This probably isn't his first rodeo. Leo was, in fact, a little embarrassed. To distract himself, he pulled up his system's attribute panel. He was in for a shock. Stamina, average, strength enhancement buff active. A whole night of activity hadn't affected his stamina. Youth was a wonderful thing. He felt that his recent exercise regimen, the daily runs, swimming, and tennis, had really paid off. He could handle an all-nighter and still get dragged out of bed to watch the sunrise. No wonder athletes were so popular. He had to keep it up. Then he remembered that Stella seemed even more energetic than him. Was her stamina better than his? He recalled how effortlessly she always ran. He definitely had to work harder. Intelligence, 7, -1/10, average. Currently affected by external interference. Risk of reduced intelligence. Host, please be cautious. The smug look on Leo's face froze. Reduced intelligence? What did that mean? He felt fine. Vibe, 7, +2/10. Mood is elevated and full. Blissfully ignorant youths have more fun. Okay, that's a bit much, he thought. He was happy, sure, but he wasn't an idiot. His integrity score had actually improved. The debuff had gone from -2 to -1. Integrity, 8, -1/10, above average moral compass. You have resolved to be an excellent and responsible man. In this moment, you are a good man, filled with the charm of a good man. His appearance had improved, too. The usual fluctuating plus or -1 had become a solid +1. Appearance, 8, +1/10 temporary, upper tier. You are very handsome today, possessing a special charm that is a mix of youthful innocence and mature, roguish appeal. Both naughty and nice. Leo checked his reflection in his phone's camera. Really? I just look. Fine. Is it that obvious? A smile crept onto his face. From the driver's seat, Walt glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the kid smiling to himself. TSK. Youth. He thought, a phantom ache in his tooth. Leo had asked the system about the attribute points before. They were mostly fixed, but the pluses and minuses were affected by his daily actions. So your fate wasn't set in stone. You could change it. For instance, if you spent every day as a shut-in, drinking soda and playing video games all night, you could take a life expectancy of 60 and, through diligent effort, reduce it to 50. Looking at his stats, Leo felt he needed a break to clear his head. Why the intelligence debuff? Maybe his brain was just too full of Stella right now. The drive to the airport would be at least half an hour. He decided to take a 10-minute nap, which, with the time dilation buff, would feel like 40 minutes. He thought he might be too keyed up to sleep, but between the satisfying breakfast and his exhaustion, the gentle rocking of the car sent him off in seconds. When his alarm went off, it felt like he had just closed his eyes. Even with the buff, it wasn't enough. He felt like he had lost more than just sleep. He needed a serious recharge. Walt drove smoothly, seeing the kid pass out in the back. Must have been a tiring night, he thought, the toothache returning. But before they'd even passed a few traffic lights, the kid's alarm went off. What kind of discipline is that? What can you even accomplish in a 10-minute nap? Leo opened his eyes, drank some of the bottled water the driver had, and poured a little onto a napkin. He pressed the cool napkin to his eyes for a moment to reduce the redness, a life hack courtesy of Jordan. Then he opened his notes to review the profile of the woman he was picking up, Dr. Genevieve Croft. He had asked Alex how he should address her. Alex, after looking at her file, had suggested calling her Dean Croft, as she was a vice dean at her university. It was a title, and people like hearing their titles. Leo decided to go with that. Experience really was the best teacher. Last time, carrying Professor Reed's bags, he had been a bundle of nerves. Today, he felt much more at ease. After his short rest, he felt his intelligence slowly returning. When they got to the airport, Walt didn't just wait in the car. He came in with Leo. On the way, Leo, channeling his inner Alex Young, stopped at a convenience store and bought a bottle of water and a pack of American spirits for Walt. Walt accepted the gift happily. At the arrival's gate, Walt immediately took the sign from Leo's hands. I'll hold this, he said. A small task like this, you shouldn't have to bother, sir. Leo was taken aback by the driver's enthusiastic service. They waited for a few minutes. Then he saw her, a woman in black trousers, a tank top, and a gray cardigan, pushing a suitcase with a bag balanced on top. She was talking with another woman, who wore a stunning black dress with a small, sparkling V-shaped clasp at the collar. The dress material was unique. From a distance, it was black, but up close it shimmered like a night sky. Leo had memorized Dr. Croft's file and recognized her instantly, but the woman next to her, he hadn't needed a file for her. He recognized her immediately from the photos on the university forums. The woman who drove the Bentley. Stella's mother, Victoria Vance. Oh crap, he had just slept with her daughter last night, and now he was meeting her mother. Leo's hand, clutching his water bottle, started to sweat. Dr. Genevieve Croft never expected that. On a flight to visit her old mentor, Professor Reed, she would run into her biggest patron. Her true fan/patron. It was a small world. Where her painting, Green Shoots, had gone up for auction in New York, she had been prepared for it not to sell. The reserve price was high because she adored the piece. A painter can't replicate their own work. Even if she tried to paint the exact same scene again, it would never be as good. Every painting captured not just skill, but the artist's state of mind at that moment. Joy, sadness, peace, urgency. Each piece was a summary of a period in her life. The tragedy for an artist, she felt, was that her finest work, the pinnacle of her craft, had to be assigned a value by someone else. Otherwise, it was worthless. Value and price were, most of the time, intertwined. Genevieve was torn between fearing her painting wouldn't sell and fearing that it would. In the end, it sold for far above her reserve price. After a spirited bidding war, the hammer fell at $600,000. Her secret hope had been $75,000, not because she needed the money, but because at that price, she could have justified keeping it. For a young, living artist to sell a piece for that much was already a mark of success. To break 100,000 would have been incredible. To break 200 was a daydream. Life had taught her to keep her expectations low. But it had sold for over 300, then 4, then 5, all the way to 600,000. It was nothing compared to the 8-figure masterpieces, of course, but for a living artist, it was a career-making sale. It had even been written up in the art section of the paper. The sale had been a pivotal moment, fast-tracking her promotions and opening doors. She had desperately wanted to thank the buyer, her anonymous benefactor, but the mysterious female tycoon had left immediately without a meeting. It wasn't until her next piece, Scent of the Rowan Tree, sold for nearly $300,000 that she learned the buyer's identity. The woman came from a prominent family that had fallen on hard times, but she had married well to a man who had come from nothing but was now quietly, immensely wealthy. Genevieve felt a little sheepish. Both paintings depicted scenes from the woman's ancestral estate, a place she had lived near as a struggling artist in her youth. The woman wasn't buying the art for its merit. She was buying back her memories. But in the art world, success begets success, and no one questioned the narrative. Now she was Dean Croft. She never imagined that, after all these years, she would meet her patron on an airplane. Victoria Vance was the woman who had bought her paintings. Genevieve was thrilled. As an artist from the South, she became animated and her accent thickened when she got excited. She was bold and immediately struck up a conversation. This wasn't just a buyer. This was her champion, the person whose whim had launched her career into the stratosphere. Genevieve didn't have children of her own, but that didn't stop her from talking about them with Victoria. "My baby is a little too good," Victoria lamented. "She's 20 and has never even dated. I worry about what will happen when she studies abroad." "How old is she?" Genevieve asked. 20 this year." 20 and never dated? Genevieve thought. Is she unattractive? Unlikely. She's probably just not telling her mother. She smiled diplomatically. "Oh, it's good for a young lady to focus on her studies. She just hasn't blossomed yet." They talked about many other things, and Genevieve, being an artist, came across as open and guileless. Victoria wasn't particularly cunning herself. She had married well and was shielded from most of life's true hardships. Most of her worries were self-inflicted. The two women found they got along surprisingly well. By the time the plane landed, they were practically best friends. They were nearly holding hands as they exited into the terminal, where they saw a sign that read, Dean Genevieve Croft. Genevieve remembered her mentor saying she was sending a student. The man holding the sign was a bit rough-looking, but standing beside him was a young man in a white t-shirt and khaki shorts with short, clean-cut hair, who looked a little shy. A huge smile spread across Genevieve's face. She adored young people. They were inspiration. University students were at their peak, healthy, handsome, full of knowledge, and not yet corrupted by the world. So pure. Victoria was also feeling better. Talking with Genevieve had been like a therapy session, and she was much more relaxed about the impending and likely tense reunion with her daughter. Then she saw the boy, the one her daughter apparently liked. What were the odds? Victoria stiffened slightly. Genevieve, however, was delighted and walked right over. "Dean Croft, Hello, Leo said politely. I'm Leo Foster. Professor Reed sent me to pick you up. I hope you had a pleasant flight. He almost said Mrs. Vance, but caught himself. He wasn't supposed to know who she was. Genevieve warmly invited Victoria to ride with them. Victoria had planned on taking her own car, but seeing the boy, she changed her mind. She desperately wanted to understand her daughter. Ever since an incident in middle school where she'd panicked, called all of Stella's friends, and tracked her down, only to find her asleep in the library, Stella had shut her out, preferring to have no friends at all rather than risk her mother interfering. This was a chance to learn about her daughter, or at least the boy she liked. Victoria agreed. Leo, this is Mrs. Vance, Genevieve said excitedly. She's heading to the university as well, so we can all go together. Leo gave Victoria a shy greeting, then took her bag. Genevieve watched him, amused. He's not shy with me, but he's blushing around Victoria? Can kids these days really sniff out who holds the purse strings? The driver, Walt, now just a background character, helped with the suitcases. His role was to hold the sign, carry the luggage, and drive. Leo's was to make conversation and assist. Genevieve, with her boisterous southern personality, found the boy's shyness endearing. Professor Reed told me you were an exceptional young man. Very handsome, too. You can call me Genevieve, and you can call her Victoria. Leo stammered, "Oh no, I couldn't." Calling Stella's mother by her first name was out of the question. Genevieve pressed on. "A handsome young man like you must have a girlfriend, right?" To her surprise, the shy boy nodded. "I do." Victoria felt a pang of something uncomfortable. So he had a girlfriend. Was it that girl from the singing competition, the one who danced so provocatively? And her baby liked this boy. What was she going to do? Then, a wave of relief washed over her. It was better this way. Her daughter was going abroad. A clean break, no messy attachments. The drive from the airport to the university took about an hour, a little longer with traffic. For people who had just spent several hours on a plane, it was tedious. Victoria had her own car and driver waiting, but seeing the boy who had come for the pickup, she had changed her plans. Money was a useful tool that worked on almost anyone, except family. Victoria wanted to understand her daughter, but her every attempt backfired. So, she humbled herself and got into the Buick minivan. Leo sat in the front passenger seat, while Dean Croft and Mrs. Vance sat in the middle row. Just as they pulled away, a system notification popped up. Host has successfully practiced falling asleep under the influence of another person, exercising excellent self-control. Reward, composed aura buff 1 day. Possessing this buff will make others perceive you as calm and reliable. Favorability, +1. Thank you, Leo thought. I could use that right now. The system replied, "You're welcome." On the road, Genevieve noticed that Victoria seemed uninterested when they talked about art or travel. But when she started chatting with Professor Reed's student, Victoria would listen intently, even chiming in occasionally. So Genevieve shifted her focus to the young man. "Leo, do you have any plans for an internship your senior year?" "I haven't found a placement yet. I'm just focusing on my classes for now." Victoria's internal monologue. A senior with no internship prospects? He must be a slacker, probably from a family with no connections. Not good enough. This boy is not good enough. Genevieve continued. "Your Professor Reed thinks very highly of you. And from what I know of Evelyn, she's incredibly picky and has quite a temper. For her to make you her assistant, she must really admire you. It was just a coincidence. Her regular assistant is on leave, so I'm filling in temporarily. Professor Reed was my calculus teacher." Victoria's internal monologue. Genevieve mentioned her mentor is a big name in mathematics. This boy was good enough to be noticed by her, to be her assistant. So he's good at math. That's something. Evelyn also mentioned that Professor Hoffman is quite taken with you, Genevieve added. He wants you to apply for his graduate program. Victoria's internal monologue. So he excels in certain subjects? And he's caught the eye of another professor? He must have some merit. Evelyn says you're an excellent tennis player, that you've even been giving her lessons. I'm all right, Leo said. I took tennis as an elective. I try to run or swim every morning. A little exercise helps clear my head. Victoria's internal monologue. He's athletic. That's good. Probably has an outgoing personality. Not bad. She also said you're quite skilled at making tea, that even Dr. Sterling praised you. That was just luck, Leo said, remaining modest. Professor Luke Hoffman's wife, Penelope Hayes, the director, saw me making tea at their home once. She thought I'd be a good fit for a small role in her new project, a team master. I'm treating it as my internship, so I asked Professor Reed to help me find a teacher to get some proper training. Victoria's internal monologue. Okay, that's a lot to process. So he does have an internship with the director, Penelope Hayes? The Penelope Hayes from Chesapeake Tides? She cast him in a role? That's not some cheap web series. Penelope Hayes only does major productions. No one of my baby likes him. The more I learn, the more there is to him. And he knows tea. I love tea. I have walls of teacups and pots at home. And he knows Dr. Sterling, the tea expert. This boy is full of surprises. He must come from a decent family to have been exposed to these things. And he can sing. I remember how moved I was listening to him at that competition. What to do? Should I use my money power? Give him a check to leave his girlfriend and date my baby? She quickly dismissed the thought. A boy who could be bought wasn't good enough, and if Stella ever found out, she'd be furious. Evelyn told me you have a TikTok account that's doing quite well. Oh, that's just something my roommates and I do for fun. We're just experimenting with it. Suddenly, Victoria spoke. That's wonderful. Could I add you on a messaging app? And what's your TikTok handle? I'm curious to see what you young people are up to. Leo's scalp prickled. Of course, Mrs. Vance. He opened his phone, his hand trembling slightly as he held out the QR code for her to scan. Dean Croft, not wanting to be left out, added him as well. Leo's contact list was becoming very professor-heavy. Genevieve's profile name was just Genevieve, and her feed was full of official-looking posts about conferences and her artwork. Victoria's profile name was simply Victoria V. Her profile picture, however, was a photo of her from when she was younger, laughing, a wide-brimmed hat on her head. She was a spitting image of a more mature Stella. Squatting next to her was a giggling toddler with only 4 top teeth, fists clenched in excitement. A baby Stella. Leo immediately saved the photo. He now possessed a picture of Stella before she had all her teeth. If he played his cards right with Mrs. Vance, maybe he could get a picture of her in diapers. The thought made him smile. Victoria's feed, however, was private. After adding them, he sent his TikTok handle to Victoria. This was getting intense. He couldn't handle any more of Genevieve's questions. What if she asked what his girlfriend looked like? He had to change the subject. Dean Croft, he said, his voice steady. After we pass this industrial park, the road gets a bit winding through the hills. You might want to rest for a bit. Genevieve nodded. Good idea. Victoria had already closed her eyes. She'd look at his TikTok later. The car arrived at the university gates. A large banner was strung across the entrance. Welcome, Dean Croft. Underneath it stood Dean Roberts in a crisp shirt and slacks, his hair slicked back, waiting in the hot sun. Hannah Huang from the registrar's office stood by with bottles of water. As the van stopped, Leo got out first. Dean Roberts rushed forward, hand outstretched, and Leo had no choice but to shake it. The dean was momentarily confused by the young man, but his demeanor was so composed, he figured it was better to shake first and ask questions later. Dean Roberts, I'm Leo Foster from the Information Management Program. Professor Reed sent me to pick up our guests. I'm happy to report that Dean Croft and Mrs. Vance have arrived safely. Just then, the van door slid open, and the 2 women emerged. The moment he saw Victoria and the Bentley that had been following them, Dean Roberts' face broke into an even warmer smile, his posture bending into a slight bow. He greeted Dean Croft warmly, then turned to Victoria. Mrs. Vance, it's been too long. We haven't seen you or your husband since the dedication of the Vance Athenaeum. The entire campus community is so grateful for your generosity. Genevieve's eyebrows shot up. This patron of hers really got around. Leo, standing to the side, was floored. Walt, the driver who knew all the university's secrets, materialized at his elbow and whispered, the new library, the Vance Athenaeum? I heard one of the students' parents donated it. Must be her. Leo's mind reeled. The building where he and Stella had shared their first real kiss was named after her parents? Unbelievable. Somehow, Leo found himself in the private dining room, seated next to Victoria Vance. He was supposed to just pick them up, but since Victoria was being cool and distant to everyone except him, he'd been invited to stay for lunch. The university, not wanting to make a huge fuss, but still needing to show proper respect to a visiting dean, had arranged a meal in a large Riverview private room in the second-floor cafeteria. In the center was a massive dining table, and off to the side, an elaborate tea-making station. Leo, a student for nearly 4 years, had no idea this place existed. Apparently, the cafeteria also had a master chef who had once cooked for state dinners. With the university leadership present, Leo's role was reduced to that of a background character, like Walt the driver. He was to be seen and not heard, unless spoken to. Noticing the tea station, Dean Croft suggested, Leo, why don't you make us some tea? Evelyn says you're wonderful at it. Professor Reed, resplendent in a vibrant green chi-pao that defied her 60-plus years, nodded in agreement. Making tea was the perfect excuse to avoid awkward small talk. The room was well stocked with what looked like high-quality teas. Mrs. Vance, Leo began, what kind of tea would you prefer? Dean Roberts nodded approvingly. The boy knows who's in charge. Dean Croft thought, He's only got eyes for the patron. Let's have some Dragonwell, Victoria said. She was particular about her tea and didn't expect much. Green tea was a safe choice. Even if brewed poorly, it was usually drinkable. But Leo possessed an intermediate tea ceremony skill, level 3. According to the system, his tea could not only soothe a wealthy woman's fatigue, but also smooth the wrinkles of sorrow in her heart, making her open up to him. He had never put it to the test. He hadn't expected his first trial run to be for Stella's mother. He selected a canister of Lion's Peak Dragonwell, simultaneously pulling up brewing instructions on his phone, like a surgeon checking WebMD before an operation. Dean Roberts saw the move, but said nothing. The student was handsome, and watching him prepare the tea was more pleasant than watching an old man like himself fumble through it. Victoria wasn't expecting much either. Professor Reed, however, had tasted Leo's tea before and had complete confidence in him. Leo glanced at the instructions, then put his phone away. He washed his hands and passed out moist towelettes to the guests. By then, the water was boiling. It was time to perform. Noticing Hannah Huang from the registrar's office standing awkwardly, Leo quietly asked her to light some incense, giving her a task and a chance to be useful in front of the dean. Hannah, who had been feeling completely out of place, gratefully busied herself with the task. Leo, meanwhile, moved with unhurried grace. He selected a glass pot and cups, rinsing them thoroughly with hot water. He placed a measure of Dragonwell leaves into the pot, swirled it 3 times, let it rest for a moment, then lifted the lid and brought the pot to his nose before passing it to Victoria. The warm glass released the fresh, nutty aroma of the tea. It wasn't a top-tier reserve, but it was the dean's personal stash and far better than standard fare. Victoria inhaled the dry fragrance. The scent was clean and comforting, cutting through the fog of her travel fatigue. Leo began the brewing process. He poured the boiling water first into a fairness pitcher to cool it slightly, then into the glass pot. His movements were fluid and natural, imbued with an unexpected elegance. The leaves danced in the water. He discarded the first rinse, then brewed the first true infusion, pouring again from the pitcher to the pot. He served the tea, filling each small cup 7/10 full, presenting the first to Victoria. She had intended to use this time to size up the boy, but she found herself captivated by his quiet confidence. He moved with a calm, focused grace that was more impressive than the flashy performances of the professional team masters she'd hired. His presence was soothing, and she felt herself finally, truly relaxing. Watching him, Dean Croft felt a familiar itch in her fingers. She wanted to paint. This was it, the first spark of inspiration she'd felt in months. Dean Roberts, a habitual tea drinker, was getting thirsty. The kid's performance was impressive, but could he deliver? Leo served the tea, presenting each cup with a steady hand. He even gave a cup to Hannah, who had returned to her spot at the edge of the room. Victoria took a sip. The temperature was perfect, warm but not scalding. The flavor was unexpectedly soft and sweet. It was like drinking from a cool forest spring on a hot day, utterly refreshing. Her expression softened, a genuine pleasure gracing her features. Dean Croft, accustomed to gulping her drinks, took a sip and let out an audible sigh of satisfaction. Oh, that's delicious. Just lovely. It tasted like a sweet, fragrant nectar with no trace of bitterness. For the first time, she understood the appeal of tea. Professor Reed smiled contentedly. Dean Roberts' eyes went wide. Was this the same dragon while he drank every day? It had to be a new batch. As an old hand, he knew his tea, but this was on another level. He needed another cup to be sure. This kid was a hustler, looking up instructions on his phone like a novice. This was the best dragon while he'd tasted all year. Just as the guests finished their cups, savoring the aftertaste, the second infusion was ready. Victoria drank the second cup, and the third. The flavors were subtle and complex. This was the magic of good tea. Her mood brightened, and the hard lines of her face softened. Even the constant anxiety that money couldn't cure seemed to recede. With every sip, her favorability score for the boy in front of her ticked up and up and up. By the time the pot was empty, lunch was served. Victoria gestured for Leo to sit next to her. Leo blushed. The meal was a resounding success. Dean Croft, though missing the spicy food she loved, found the meal delicious. Victoria, watching Leo eat with gusto and impeccable manners, found her appreciation for him growing even more. After lunch, Professor Reed whisked Genevieve away. But Victoria lingered, chatting with Leo. Your hometown is near Lakeview City, isn't it? I've been there a few times. The food is wonderful. Leo was internally screaming. I like you better when you were intimidating. This sudden friendliness is freaking me out. As they talked, Victoria's eyes flickered to his mouth. Was that a cut on his lip? She glanced away quickly, not wanting to stare. Leo walked them to the main fountain, then excused himself. As he left, he saw Stella, dressed in sweats and a t-shirt, bounding toward her mother, a huge smile on her face. For a moment, Victoria looked like she was seeing her little girl again, running to greet her after a day at kindergarten. The second cup of dragon, well, tasted different from the first. The first had been sweeter, more delicate. The second had a faint touch of astringency that gave way to an even sweeter finish. The process of tasting and appreciating the subtle differences in each infusion was a pleasure in itself. Victoria was astonished. The last time she'd been here, she'd been unexpectedly moved by a student's performance at a singing competition, an experience that had forced her to reconsider her prejudices about the school. Now, this same boy's tea had stunned her again. Victoria was a serious tea enthusiast. With ample time and money, a person needed a hobby, and she pursued hers with meticulous dedication. She had started out of boredom, but had grown to genuinely love it. She was discerning. Once you're used to fine tea, the everyday stuff becomes difficult to drink. She hadn't expected much, especially after seeing him consult his phone. Yet the experience had been revelatory. The private room was gaudily decorated, a far cry from the Michelin-starred restaurants she frequented. But in this tacky room, drinking from a simple glass cup, she had tasted something extraordinary. The tea itself wasn't exceptionally rare. She'd watched him scoop it from a standard canister. The dry aroma had been clean, but not remarkable. Yet the taste was on another level. He had made a $50 tea taste like a $500 one. It was soothing, centering, and calming. By the sixth cup, the flavor had faded, but she felt a sense of perfect completion. The experience had been so pleasant it made her feel open and relaxed. A light sweat broke on her brow, a sign of good circulation stimulated by the tea. Her mood was lighter than it had been in weeks. Her normally severe expression had softened. Even the ever-present knot of anxiety in her stomach had loosened. At that moment, her affection for the young man before her was skyrocketing. But all too soon, the pot was empty, and it was time for lunch. Victoria gestured for Leo to sit beside her. Leo's cheeks flushed. //omega// Dean Croft, who normally didn't care for tea, now felt inspired to take it up herself. She was even more intrigued by the young man who had made it. The surgery to remove a small tumor behind her eye had been successful, but had left her unable to paint for months, devoid of inspiration. Watching Leo's graceful movements, she had felt a creative spark for the first time since the operation. A new painting was already forming in her mind. This trip was proving to be more fruitful than she could have imagined. Professor Reed, the eldest and most experienced of the group, savored the tea as one would savor life itself, slowly, thoughtfully. At the table, Dean Roberts gave a brief, formal welcome, and then the food began to arrive. Leo was starving. The previous night had taken a lot out of him. He waited until Victoria picked up her chopsticks before he began to eat. His family dinners, with his formal aunt and uncle, had drilled a certain etiquette into him. He ate with a steady, unhurried pace, avoiding common faux pas like chewing loudly or picking through a communal dish. Victoria, her opinion of him already high, was further impressed. The meal was a delight for all involved. Even Dean Croft, who craved spice, enjoyed the skillfully prepared, non-spicy dishes. After lunch, Professor Reed led Dean Croft away for a tour. But Victoria held Leo back. Your hometown is near Lakeview City, correct? I've been there few times. A wonderful place for food. Leo fought to keep his composure. I'm not used to you being so nice. It's unnerving. As they talked, Victoria's gaze briefly fell on his lips. Was that a cut? She looked away, not wanting to be rude. Leo walked her to the fountain near the women's dorms, where her driver was waiting to help with Stella's luggage. Then he excused himself. As he turned to leave, he saw Stella, dressed in a comfortable t-shirt and shorts, come flying out of the dorm and into her mother's arms. For a fleeting moment, Victoria's face softened, and Leo could see a glimmer of the young mother in the old photograph, her little girl running to her with pure, unadulterated joy.